Chapter 1357. The blue dome of heaven pressed down and a gust of wind wreaked havoc. A gust of cold wind swept up the fallen leaves into the clouds. Yi Qinghan and Jiang Jingtian held their pseudo-world treasures and emitted a dense world power. The pressure caused everyone to not dare to make a sound. Having a pseudo-world treasure and not having one were two completely different matters. Whether or not one could activate the pseudo-world treasure was another matter. Pseudo-world treasures could recognize their own masters. Those without such ability, even if they had a great opportunity, like the person who obtained the world-piercing spear, could only sell it in exchange for other resources. They could not use it for themselves. Coincidentally, the world-piercing spear was very suitable for men like Jiang Jingtian who were filled with wild and explosive nature. He also had the Qilin bloodline. Even though he was holding the world-piercing spear, he could still move like the wind and rain. As for Yi Qinghan, there was no need to mention him. When it came to comprehending the world power, if he said he was number one, no one would dare to say they were number two. With two monstrous geniuses holding pseudo-world treasures, so what if the Divine Master was 2 levels higher? If he could withstand 3,000 moves without dying, it meant he was powerful. Later, you will surround and kill the Lich King first. After the Divine Master makes his move, you will retreat and help me. Yi Qinghan whispered. If the people from heaven help him, will you be able to escape? Jiang Jingtian looked worriedly at the white-robed Divine Master of Heaven. He was a little worried. When experts exchanged blows, one's life could be taken in an instant. Yi Qinghan smiled confidently. As long as the Realm Lords and Absolute Circle experts did not make a move, no one could kill him. After all, the Yuling robe's abnormal defense was not something anyone could break. As for the soul, other than the Realm Lords, no one could destroy it. Don't worry, they cannot break my defense. I only need an excuse. As long as they make a move, it will be fine. Yi Qinghan said indifferently. Everyone quickly walked out of the city. Shi Gu was already prepared. His face was red and his hands were trembling. He had long wanted to show off his skills. If he could kill the Lich King today, he would gain face. As soon as they left the city, they saw the Lich King standing not too far away. As one of the few fake Realm Lords, he was confident that as long as he acted, he would be able to kill a few over-gods with ease. Thus, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Yi Qinghan stepped out of the city and looked at the Lich King's arrogant appearance. At the same time, he transmitted a message to everyone: this Lich King's true form is that of a snake. It doesn't have a tail, and its fatal weakness is its lower body and throat. The other parts of its defense are even more terrifying than godly armor. It's impossible to break through, especially its head. Brat, you were very arrogant just now. Come with me if you have the guts. If you don't come, then be my grandson. Sooner or later, I will make sure that everyone around you dies. The Lich King coldly looked at Yi Qinghan and gave the order to fight to the death. Do I even need to personally kill you? Just a little tailless snake. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly. He raised his eyes and gestured with his hand. Please. Let's go to the wilderness. Let's see if you can survive today. Humph. The Lich King coldly snorted and soared into the sky. Whoosh! The people of the Kuang sect followed closely behind. Divine light shone in all directions, and the pressure was overwhelming. A group of elites suppressed many of the older generation. The golden light paved the way, and the dark clouds covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, they were torn apart by the strong cultivators, and the golden light shone on the earth. The old man from the Mu clan stood on the roof, his clothes fluttering behind him. His gaze was cold and piercing like torches, piercing through everything. He could actually see through the shackles of the Kuang sect and the Lich King. At this moment, a handsome young man appeared on the rooftop. He had a graceful bearing and was dressed in white. He was definitely a rare fine young master since ancient times. He looked gentle and weak, about 1.8 meters tall. No one would have guessed that he was the top expert of the Mu family, Mu Junsheng. He was an existence comparable to Mu Yunfeng and the others. He said respectfully, "Patriarch, you were looking for me." "Yes, Junsheng. Follow them and take a look. You have too little combat experience. Perhaps you can cooperate with the people of the Left General's residence to deal with the Lich King. This Lich King's strength is not bad, and he has rich combat experience. It's always beneficial to learn from him. At the same time, you can also understand the fighting methods and survival skills of the elites of the Left General's residence," the old man from the Mu clan said in a low voice. "Ah. This is equivalent to participating in the battle between the Yentian Pavilion and the Left General's residence. It might even affect the Archaean sect. Didn't you dislike the clan being involved in these things?" Mu Junsheng asked in surprise. "Chaos is upon us. No one can escape it. Either we fight, or we wait for death. The Mu clan cannot remain pure." The old man shook his head and sighed. "That old thing Potian came looking for me. He left me a word, stole my 8 trigrams pot, and ran away." "What word?" Mu Junsheng asked curiously. "Chaos." The old man from the Mu clan said in a deep voice, "Seeking opportunities in chaos. The Mu clan must take the initiative to seek opportunities, and not wait for them. Zhua Feng's origin is unknown, and I can't see through him. I can't confirm if he is Xiao Yoshui's disciple, nor can I confirm if he is a descendant of the Xiao clan. However, he gave the divine spear the name World-Piercing. I know that he is not an ordinary person. His future will either be glorious or tragic." Boom! Just as the two were talking, the horizon was torn apart. A spear shattered space and pierced through the void. A black hole seemed to appear at the end of the sky, sucking in everything. The world energy brought along the power of thunder to destroy everything. Jiang Jingtian and Shirgu attacked at the same time. Boundless heaven and earth, brick erect, vault of heaven open. Boom! The brick enlarged infinitely and was swung up by Shirgu. The edge of the brick carried a terrifying attack and smashed towards the Lich King's head. The vault of heaven was directly shattered, and half of the sky fell into chaos. Mo Li and Li Feng attacked from the side at the same time. Although they did not have the power of the world, they had the power to destroy heaven and earth. One attacked the throat, and the other attacked the lower body. Open! Jiang Jingtian's veins bulged, and his Qilin bloodline erupted. His spear pierced forward, and it seemed to have the power to pierce a world. A huge whirlpool swept up, enveloping the Lich King within. Other than facing it head-on, the Lich King had no other choice. The Lich King was furious, and a bone appeared in his hand. It was the spine of Yi Qinghan's right-hand man, the resentful dragon. It was 1 meter long, and it was the toughest piece. It was filled with the power of the world, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a pseudo-world artifact. Bang! The world-piercing spear and the resentful dragon's spine collided, and the power of the world spread out in all directions. The qi soared into the galaxy, shattering 1,000 li, and even the mountain range was flattened. The spine was wrapped by the Lich King's power of the world, and there wasn't even a crack on it. The recoil of the qi directly sent Jiang Jingtian flying. Just as the electric sparks flashed, Shirgu smashed the brick at the back of the Lich King's head. The edges of the brick emitted a sharp light. If it hit the back of the Lich King's head, it would definitely cause his head to bleed, and even his soul would be destroyed. Boom! The Lich King was indeed a pseudo-world overlord. The instant he dodged Mo Li and Li Feng's attack, he was still able to punch out. With the majestic power of the world, he punched the brick. Kacha! The crisp sound of bones breaking resounded through the clouds. The Lich King roared in anger, and his virtual leg swept towards Shi Ji's waist. Chapter 1358. When the Lich King's fist landed on the corner of the brick, he realized that the brick was even scarier than a boundary weapon. It was like a mortal punching a soldering iron. He screamed in pain. He was so angry that he gave up on defending against the others. The long leg formed by the power of the world swept and kicked at Shi Ji's waist. Shi Ji's hair stood on end. If the kick was solid, it would probably break him. He was caught off guard and his body twisted like a snake. The brick was pulled from his upper right to his waist. Bang! Roar! The Lich King's kick landed on the brick, which was equivalent to his soul hitting a pseudo-boundary weapon. When a pseudo-boundary master and a pseudo-boundary weapon collided, the pseudo-boundary weapon's defense was obviously stronger. His soul felt like it was being torn apart. The Lich King screamed in pain and his face twisted. It was even more mournful than the previous scream. It was extremely ear-piercing. The souls of the arrogant sex people were almost shattered. Roar! At that moment, Xiaoya suddenly appeared. Her sword pierced through the clouds and swept away the dark clouds. The tip of her sword carried a sword aura that could tear everything apart as she attacked the Lich King's head. Xiaoya's cultivation was not inferior to Xue Zhihuang's. After all, she was the Lord of Hell. Her attacks were strange and untraceable. However, the Lich King's soul was extremely strong. The moment she attacked, he noticed it and dodged her attack. One sword shakes the heavens. 9 worlds shake. Roar! Swoosh! Before Xiaoya's sword stabbed into the ground, the sword momentum changed. The divine sword in her hand suddenly turned to the sky. The back of the sword turned into the tip of the sword and slashed at the Lich King. Boom! Before the sword arrived, the sword aura hit the Lich King's chest. However, his body's defense was comparable to the ancestral dragon's. His clothes were made of dragon scales. When the sword aura hit him, a mighty dragon aura blocked the sword aura. Bang! The sword aura dissipated, but the divine sword had already hit the Lich King's body. The Lich King was sent flying by the terrifying supreme god power. Xiaoya did not take the opportunity to chase after him. Instead, she quietly disappeared. Boom! Boom! Shi Gu and Jiang Jingtian were at the forefront. With a spear and a brick, they pierced through the void and smashed through the clouds. Xuan Emperor, Mo Li, and Li Feng attacked from the start. Tong Tong, on the other hand, had learned his lesson. He had been led astray by the divine bird. His eyes darted around sneakily as he kept getting closer to the Lich King. He was waiting for the Lich King to be heavily injured so that he could kill him in one strike. Boom! Boom! Bang bang bang! All the heroes fought in a group and retreated after a single strike. They didn't give the Lich King the opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Their coordination was absolutely perfect. A total of 21 people attacked. Yan Yunbei was still in hiding. Even Yi Qinghan didn't know where he was. However, he was sure that he was waiting for an opportunity. Ji Sha, Si Wu, and the other two also didn't appear. However, Yi Qinghan could still vaguely sense their location. However, there were too many people within 100 miles. All of them were peerless experts. They were all watching the battle, hoping to gain some experience. Such a great battle had never appeared since the Great Wasteland Domain War. Yi Qinghan stood alone on a mountain peak. He was about 10 miles away from the battlefield. There were no experts guarding him in the surroundings. He was giving the Divine Master the opportunity to attack. However, the Divine Master was more cautious. He searched the surroundings for a long time and didn't find any hidden experts. The Heavenly Master also quietly approached Yi Qinghan. The bracelet on Yi Qinghan's wrist trembled slightly as if it was warning him. However, Yi Qinghan had no way to find the Heavenly Master's exact location. The Insher's pot was in his hand and could explode with a fatal blow at any time. If the Divine Master didn't attack, the Heavenly Master would definitely not take the initiative to attack. However, once the Divine Master attacked, he was absolutely confident that he could kill Yi Qinghan in one blow. Both sides were in a stalemate. The Lich King was getting more and more familiar with the insane sex attacks. He began to counterattack in an orderly manner. He actually managed to turn the situation around. The over-god weapon in the Lich King's hand was smashed. Shirgu once again made a contribution. Unfortunately, he was hit by the Lich King's palm and almost vomited blood. The Divine Master was still waiting. As long as Shirgu and Jiang Jingtian were seriously injured, the power of the two pseudo-world weapons would be lost. Then, he would be able to kill Yi Qinghan without worrying about the insane sex reinforcements. Xiaoya attacked again. Her sword forced the Lich King back and disappeared again. The Lich King was so angry that he shouted. However, he couldn't find any trace of Xiaoya. This assassination technique was definitely top-notch. It was much more advanced than Yan Yinbei's secret technique. However, she didn't have Yan Yinbei's state of mind. Even if the sky fell and the earth cracked, his expression wouldn't change. Yi Qinghan coldly looked at the battlefield. He didn't move an inch. He allowed the wind to flutter his black hair and his clothes to flutter. No matter if the insane sex people were at an advantage or a disadvantage, he had no intention of attacking. The Divine Master's eyes were fixed on Yi Qinghan's back. The two of them were separated by a mountain. His hand was pressed on the handle of the Thunder God's hammer. He was already preparing to attack. The wind and clouds were raging. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The sky was filled with afterimages. The Lich King's aura was soaring. After not killing a single person for an hour, he was burning with anxiety. He glared at Shirgu and Jiang Jingtian angrily. If it weren't for them holding him back, Xiaoya wouldn't have the chance to sneak attack him. Xue Jiuhuang wouldn't have been able to attack him continuously. The Lich King's face was pale. He didn't care about Tong Tong, who was hiding at the foot of the mountain not far away. In his eyes, he could kill hundreds of such little guys with one slap. Shi Ji's mouth was bleeding. He glanced at Jiang Jingtian and signaled with his eyes that they were ready to cooperate and try to injure the Lich King. Swoosh! Jiang Jingtian got the signal. He and Shirgu formed a pincer attack. Li Feng attacked the left side and Xue Jiuhuang attacked the right side. Boom! The first to move was not Jiang Jingtian but Mo Li, Xian Yain, and the other insane sex experts. They tore the sky apart. The sky was filled with sword chi and blade radiance, blocking the Lich King's chance to escape. Whoosh! Jiang Jingtian closed his eyes. He became one with his spear and turned into a divine spear. He pierced through the 9 boundaries and destroyed the spacetime with the power of thunder. His divine sense locked onto the Lich King. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the Lich King. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Lich King twisted the tip of his foot. Lightning streaked across. It was as if the sky was breaking. The clouds were pressing down. He reached out to grab the world-piercing spear. Boom! Shirgu swung the stone brick from behind and smashed it at the back of the Lich King's head. Li Feng attacked from the left side and Xue Jiuhuang attacked from the right side. The timing of their attacks was almost the same. However, the Lich King suddenly spun at high speed in the air, forming a small tornado. Its tearing force was even more terrifying than a black hole. The 4 people's attacks were pulled by it and blasted toward each other. Bang! Jiang Jingtian's spear did not break the whirlpool. It blasted on Shi Ji's stone brick. Xue Jiuhuang's sword clashed with Li Feng's sword. In a split second, the power of the collision tore the Lich King's whirlpool apart. However, the four of them were also sent flying by each other's attacks. Boom! At this moment, Xiaoya pressed down on the big net in the sky. Her sword and the attacks of the insane sect formed a sharp sword net. They kept pressing down and knocked the Lich King to the ground. Tong Tong's eyes lit up. Her small body crushed a huge mountain rock. She was like a sharp sword. Her claws tore through the void. Her tiger teeth bit at the Lich King's throat. Chapter 1359. Hua. Although Tong Tong was weak, his speed and strength couldn't be underestimated. The Lich King was pressed down by more than 10 people, and with Little Moon's support, it was unable to stop its body from falling. It could only continue to fall. However, Tong Tong dashed up from below, almost instantly reaching the Lich King's chest. Without any defense, her two tender arms grabbed onto the Lich King's shoulders, and her tiger fang pierced through the Lich King's throat like a sharp sword. Lich King was stunned. He didn't expect this fellow to not use a weapon and just bite directly. And in an instant, he broke through his defense and bit his most vital point, the throat. Lich King only felt a vast amount of death qi seeping into his body through Tong Tong's teeth, affecting his blood and qi. Even his strength was somewhat stagnant, unable to explode. He screamed and ignored the attacks above him, smashing his palm onto Tong Tong's head. Pang! Tong Tong's body was like paper, filled with world energy and completely torn from the inside, blood staining the sky. Pang! Little Moon exerted strength and combined with the insane sect people, smashing Lich King into the ground. Rumble! Pang pang pang! Hua! The ground caved in and dozens of attacks fell like rain, smashing onto Lich King's head. Ao ao ao! Lich King screamed and clutched his neck. Death qi filled the air and his blood and qi couldn't flow smoothly. His world energy could only barely expel the death qi. After being attacked by Shirgu and Jiang Jingtian, his powerful pseudo-sector Lord Soul shook and could collapse at any moment. Lich King kept coughing out blood, his body was smashed into pieces by the stone bricks. Then, Jiang Jingtian's spear smashed him even deeper, his scaled clothes were almost torn apart and his life force dissipated. He was heavily injured. Ugh! Tong Tong's flesh and blood had been reconstructed, but the Lich King's attack had left him in an extremely miserable state. Even though his body had been restored, he was still madly vomiting blood. His eyes were red, but a crafty smile appeared on his face. He no longer had that resentful and angry expression. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly. It seemed that the divine bird was quite powerful. It had even taught the one-track-minded Tong Tong to become shameless. Gagaga, a great teacher produces a great student. The divine bird rushed out of the bloodline and laughed maniacally. It seemed like it had been watching the battle all this time. Just as Yi Qinghan was in a daze, the divine master held the thunder god's hammer in his hand and commanded thousands of lightning bolts to surround him. They fell from the sky and tore everything apart. Boom! Ka ka ka! Tens of thousands of bolts of lightning were magnificent and majestic, as if they wanted to swallow the world. The mountain peak beneath Yi Qinghan's feet was flattened. Dark clouds covered the sky and heavy rain poured down. It was as if the sky had collapsed. The divine bird was so frightened that it shrank its head back into Yi Qinghan's bloodline. It turned into an imprint and didn't even show its head. Boom! Yi Qinghan was smashed to the bottom of the mountain. The feather spirit robe emitted a faint and mysterious glow, directly repelling the lightning. However, the power was still boundless, causing his blood to boil and his face to turn pale. Die! The divine master was burning with rage. Not only did he want to destroy Yi Qinghan, he also wanted to torture the divine bird to death. In short, he hated it as much as he wanted. He attacked with hatred and was incomparably ruthless. Although Yi Qinghan's blood was boiling, his soul wasn't in chaos. He directly activated the 5 elements profound and passed through the mountains and turned into a wisp of smoke. He appeared 100 meters away and watched the Divine Master attack. Not only was he not angry, but he also smiled with a chilling and evil aura. I was really worried that you would be a coward today and not attack. Yi Qinghan was calm and collected. He held the Insher's pot and looked down as if he wasn't attacked at all. He quietly appeared on another mountain peak and watched the Divine Master and the Heavenly Master attack from both sides. He appeared halfway up the mountain where he was standing just now. Half of the mountain was flattened, which showed how terrifying the Divine Master's attack was. The Divine Master's eyes flashed fiercely and said coldly, "Don't talk nonsense with him. Attack." Whoosh! The Heavenly Master turned into a sword light and pierced through the void. He directly slashed past Yi Qinghan, causing the feather spirit robe to flutter. Yi Qinghan only moved slightly and dodged the attack. His body fused with the Chaos Beast and his speed reached the extreme. The Realm Lord's soul was also circulated to the limit. That instant was enough for him to react. Whoosh! 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 The Divine Master activated the Thunder God's lightning hammer again. Countless lightning bolts covered 100 miles. Whoosh! 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 Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and shuttled through the lightning bolts. Even if there was an occasional lightning attack, it was neutralized by the feather spirit robe. With his speed and reaction speed, he could handle it with ease. With the Divine Master and the Heavenly Master's speed and strength, not to mention killing Yi Qinghan, it would be good if they could injure him. The people who were watching the show were stunned. Their pupils contracted. They didn't expect the intelligent left marshal to have such terrifying combat strength. Although he was only dodging, he wasn't at a disadvantage. This was enough to prove that his combat strength wasn't inferior to Mu Yunfeng and the others. In fact, he might even be stronger. The Heavenly Master was anxious. He had some tricks up his sleeve and his speed was also very fast. However, when facing Yi Qinghan, he didn't have the slightest advantage. He was like a piece of trash chasing after Yi Qinghan's butt and couldn't attack him. The pressure that the Divine Master gave Yi Qinghan was even greater. However, before he could completely go crazy, another terrifying existence appeared. His cultivation was at the peak of the paramount realm. His sword techniques were messy, but his destructive power wasn't inferior to an orthodox peak existence. Ling Huanyu. Although his sword techniques were messy, his destructive power was indeed strong. He directly attacked the Heavenly Master. Whoosh! Whoosh! Leave him to me. The Divine Master is yours. Ling Huanyu said confidently. The Divine Master was furious and scolded coldly, "Ling Huanyu, this matter has nothing to do with you. Get lost. Otherwise, I'll make you disappear forever." Ling Huanyu was silent for a while. Then, he said calmly, "I'm sorry. This matter has something to do with me. I've already formed an alliance with the Zhuai. His matter is my matter." The Divine Master panicked. Originally, the two of them couldn't kill Yi Qinghan alone. Now, with the addition of the top 5 paramount kings from the Snow Nation blocking the Heavenly Master, there was even less of a chance to kill Yi Qinghan. On the other side, the Lich King had been ambushed by Tong Tong. His fatal injuries were getting more and more serious. He went from having the upper hand to losing his momentum. After being hit by hundreds of attacks, his head was bleeding and his vitality was fading. He immediately chose to escape. However, Quan Zong and the others didn't stop him and allowed him to leave. This was because their target today was the Divine Master. Killing him and taking the Thunder God's lightning hammer was the most important thing. Whoosh! Jiang Jingtian and the others quickly surrounded the Divine Master and the Heavenly Master. Then, the 10,000 Snow Wolf riders brought by Yi Qing Han and the 100 top experts from the Snow Nine Kings' residence also appeared quietly. They tightly surrounded the area. Yi Qing Han didn't even bother to attack. He looked at the Divine Master with an evil smile and said in a hoarse voice, "The Snow God sect offended their superiors. They murdered Marshal Snow and openly surrounded me. They have the intention of betraying their realm. This is an unforgivable crime. Anyone who participates in the suppression of the Snow God sect will be rewarded handsomely." Chapter 1360. As soon as Yi Qing Han gave the order, the experts in the surroundings all revealed excited expressions. Not only would they be able to beat a drowning dog, but they would also be able to express their goodwill to the left Marshal and the Ninth Emperor, who were at the peak of their power. In the blink of an eye, those who were watching the show from the sidelines pointed their spears at the Divine Master and rushed forward. The Divine Master panicked. Now that he was surrounded by the insane sect, there was no way he could escape. With so many experts surrounding him, there was no way he could survive. "How dare you? This is a grudge between me and Zhuofeng. If you dare to interfere, I will uproot all of you after I leave." The Divine Master threatened angrily. Yi Qing Han snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Not just you, even the Divine Sect won't be able to escape today. Assassinating Commander Yun is a heinous crime. I won't list any other crimes, but this and today's attempt to assassinate me are enough to wipe out your sect. This has nothing to do with me. Sui Shui, if you show mercy today, I will repay you generously in the future. Otherwise, you wouldn't want the heavenly assassins to cause you sleepless nights, right?" The Master of Heavenly Hall threatened as he looked coldly at Yi Qing Han. It would have been better if he did not threaten him. Once he did, Yi Qing Han smiled coldly and took out the Incher's pot. With the lid in his hand, the pot flew into the sky and aimed the mouth of the pot at the ground. A ray of divine light shot out from the pot. The power of the world revolved around the nine-colored divine light and absorbed everything it saw. However, it was also under the control of Yi Qing Han. Incher's pot, absorb all the souls of the world. Refine the heaven and earth, and form a world. Yi Qing Han rushed up to the sky and formed a seal with his palms. He activated the law of the Incher's pot, which was completely different from Bian Ying's. He pressed his finger on the bottom of the Incher's pot. The mouth of the Incher's pot was like a black hole that swallowed everything. Boom boom boom. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Everything became restless and the world shook. The 1,000-meter-tall mountains were uprooted and swallowed by the Incher's pot. In the center of the battlefield, the clothes of the insane sect's people fluttered, but they were not sucked away by the Incher's pot. In fact, the Incher's pot did not have any effect on them. However, the Divine Master and the Master of Heavenly Hall were different. Their eyes were on their faces and their divine power to resist the pot's pot. Boom! The God of Thunder's lightning hammer was wielded by the God of Thunder. The lightning that was filled with the power of the world clashed with the power of the world from the Incher's pot. Sparks flew everywhere. Incher's pot's eyes. Worlds he was of. His was of his could, his I's power, his S.A. was of S of. His, of S the ground was constantly being torn apart, and everything was being shattered. Even though the God of God and the Heavenly King had the Thunder God's lightning hammer, their bodies were still being torn apart. Their comprehension of the power of the world was far inferior to Yi Qing Han's. They could only passively resist and could not forcefully counterattack. Boom! Boom! At that moment, Jiang Jingtian and Shi Gu wielded their pseudo-world treasures and attacked the two of them. The four pseudo-world treasures were in a chaotic battle. In an instant, it had become an unprecedented battle. The sky cracked and the surroundings collapsed. The Incher's pot fought against the black hole and gained the upper hand. It swallowed the black hole. The pot's mouth grew larger and larger. Yi Qinghan's godly power was sucked dry. The Divine Master and the Master of Heavenly Hall were sucked into the black hole under Jiang Jingtian and Shi Ji's attacks. Their bodies were unstable and they were sucked into the Incher's pot. However, Jiang Jingtian and Shi Gu were also swallowed. Once they were in the pot, the world in the pot became Yi Qinghan's territory. He was the lord and could control everything in the pot. Unlike Bianing, who could only rely on the Incher's pot. Whoosh! The power of the world within the gourd spun madly, causing the four of them to feel dizzy and disoriented. Yi Qinghan seized the opportunity to drag Jiang Jingtian and Shi Gu out from the world within the gourd. Then, he sealed the mouth of the gourd, sealing the two experts within the gourd. The spectators didn't even have time to do anything. They watched as the Divine Master and the Master of Heavenly Hall were taken away by Yi Qinghan and the others. They were stunned. The Mu family elder and Mu Junsheng, who were standing far away, were stunned. They were still talking. They thought the battle would last for at least a day and a night. They didn't expect it to end in just a few hours. The Zhuo marshal's residence had won. No one died. The Lich King was defeated. The Divine Master and the Master of Heavenly Hall were captured alive. This Zhuo Feng is so powerful. He can use the Incher's pot to this extent. His comprehension of the Incher's pot's pot is almost on par with mine. The old man from the Mu family said in a deep voice. How old is he? Judging from his appearance and life force, he is at most my age. How can he be compared to you? Mu Junsheng asked in shock. I suspect that he is the reincarnation of one of the almighty experts from our era. But there was no one with his style back then. The Mu family elder narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice. Could it be Senior Xiao Lushui? Mu Junsheng asked curiously. No, I know Xiao Lushui. He is a romantic and elegant man. He does things like flowing water and clouds. He is incomparably carefree. His character is as elegant as the Divine King. He doesn't have the slightest bit of vulgarity. But Zhuo Feng is different. He is like a fox. Moreover, he is the most treacherous fox. Even I can't see through him. The Mu family elder shook his head. At this time, Yi Qinghan and the others returned to the auction house. After returning to the relay station, Yi Qinghan's tired face was very pale. The eruption just now had used up all of his divine power. Now, he couldn't even stand properly. After returning to his room, Yi Qinghan swallowed a large amount of heavenly treasures. But they couldn't fill up the space of his godhead and spiritual essence. His divine power quickly reverberated. The blood in his body roared once again. His vitality surged. Countless divine medicines were swallowed. It took an entire day and night for Yi Qinghan to recover. However, his divine power seemed to have improved a lot. Whether it was the quantity or quality, it was much higher than before. After recovering, Yi Qinghan's face was flushed red. He couldn't contain his excitement. Not only did his cultivation improve, but he also captured the Divine Master. He could avenge Tong Tong now. Soon, Yi Qinghan called Tong Tong to the main hall. Tong Tong also looked at Yi Qinghan with anticipation. He rubbed his fists and rubbed his palms. He couldn't wait to charge into the Incher's pot and bite the Divine Master to death to avenge his family. Wait until I seal the Divine Master. You can torture him however you want, but you can't generate any resentment. Do you understand? Yi Qinghan reminded. I won't. Father, don't worry. Uncle Bird taught me that when facing an expert, I can't have any resentment even if I can't win. As the saying goes, 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Perhaps in a few days, I can climb on top of the Divine Master's head and pee. I feel like I can do it now, Tong Tong said with a serious face. Of course. Today, everything I taught you will be realized. This divine bird will pee on top of his head. The divine bird rushed out and said arrogantly. Yi Qinghan sneered. He mobilized the power of the world. The Inshir's pot was thrown into chaos. The Inshir's pot desperately smashed the divine master and the heavenly master deep into the filthy pool. The two of them struggled madly. The thunder god's lightning hammer struck, but it was like they were in a barren world. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't break through this world. Chapter 1361. Yi Qinghan was controlling the Inshir's pot from the outside. The spatial turbulence within was overwhelming, and the world energy was forcefully pulling them down. After an unknown period of time, the God Master and the leader of Heavenly Hall were completely exhausted. Their godly energy was depleted, and they could only barely stand. If the whirlpool continued to wreak havoc, they would be buried in the pool below. The God Master was terrified and furious. He didn't expect himself to be reduced to such a state. He roared and howled, but his voice couldn't travel outside. The leader of Heavenly Hall was completely dispirited. His legs were powerless, and he was lying in the void, ready to welcome death. Right at this moment, Yi Qinghan appeared in front of them with the divine bird and Tong Tong. His smug smile made the God Master even more furious. He wanted to use the Thunder God's hammer to destroy Yi Qinghan, but this was Yi Qinghan's domain. Pa! Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and slapped the God Master, causing him to spin a few rounds. In here, I am a god. I am your master. You should treat your master with respect. Kneel before this seat. Yi Qinghan looked down at the God Master and said in a low voice. Boom! Yi Qinghan's world overlord soul erupted from the pot. It was as though the real world overlord had appeared in front of the God Master. The will in his eyes made others not dare to go against him. The pupils of the God Master and the leader of Heavenly Hall shrunk. At this moment it was as though they had lost control of their bodies. Their souls were isolated, and their bodies were trembling. With a bang, they knelt before Yi Qinghan. You. The God Master was terrified. For a moment, he didn't know how to address Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan smiled evilly. He said indifferently, You still don't know who I am. You are the world overlord. The God Master said in fear. The God Master's body trembled, and his fingertips were trembling. He begged with a hoarse voice, Supreme Lord, this lowly one didn't know that you are the world overlord. Please spare this lowly one. No matter how strong a supreme god was, they were like babies in front of a world overlord. World overlord could kill them with a single thought. Other than pseudo-sector lords, no one would be able to fight against sector lords. However, even though Yi Qinghan had the soul of a sector lord, he was still a high and intermediate stage noob. Facing a pseudo-sector lord great circle, even if he had the Inshir pot, he was still an ant, unable to withstand a single blow. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and reached out his hand to grab the hammer of the Thunder God. You can step aside. I have nothing to say to you for now. But, God Leader, I, child pupil, have a personal grudge with you. As for your fate, it is up to him to decide. The Divine Lord was stunned. He couldn't believe it and mumbled, How could this be? How could you possibly be the Supreme Realm Lord? The Lord of the Seven Realms is already in closed-door cultivation, and you have the soul of a Realm Lord, but your cultivation is only at the high level. Which powerful being are you the reincarnation of? Pa! Tong Tong hated the God Lord to the core. Her small body twisted and exploded. She slapped the God Lord's face. Boom! Tong Tong's strength couldn't be underestimated. The God Lord was sent flying. Yi Qinghan's intent moved. A wall of intent appeared behind the God Lord, almost shattering the God Lord's body. However, the God Lord didn't dare to resist. The Realm Lord had already appeared. Even though he was still a high god, his soul was that of a true realm lord. If he didn't resist, he might still have a chance to live. But if he did, he would die. Pa pa pa. Pa. Tong Tong seemed to only know how to slap. When she hit someone, she only hit the face. Occasionally, she would try to break the spine of the God Lord. However, she failed every time. Because the God Lord's cultivation was much higher than her, other than these humiliating actions, she couldn't cause any harm to the God Lord. The God Lord was slapped until his face was red. 5 fingerprints could be seen clearly. He was thrown to the ground several times. At this moment, he was like a wronged little wife. He only hoped that the Supreme Realm Lord wouldn't bother about ants like them. However, he didn't know that Yi Qinghan wanted to kill him from the very beginning. The Heavenly Master didn't dare to say anything. Seeing the God Lord being slapped a few thousand times, and the divine bird even climbed up his head and peed on it, he felt disgusted. That kind of humiliation was unimaginable. God Lord, when the time comes, you can resist. This divine bird feels that it's boring to be beaten like this. The divine bird said with a wretched expression. The God Lord's mouth twitched. His eyes turned red. However, there was nothing he could do. Not to mention that he didn't want to resist, even if he wanted to, he didn't have the strength to do so. The divine energy in his body was empty. Even his spiritual space was sealed. His life and death were in the hands of Yi Qinghan. Supreme Realm Lord, this junior is willing to submit. I beg you to be magnanimous and spare this junior. The God Lord knelt down and begged with a face full of despair. It's too boring to admit defeat so quickly, Yi Qinghan said calmly. How could this junior dare to resist an existence like you? I didn't know who you were before, so I offended you. Otherwise, even if I ate leopard guts, I wouldn't have dared to ask you for the supreme snow lotus, nor would I have dared to attack the divine bird. The divine lord smiled bitterly. Yi Qinghan sneered. The divine sect must be destroyed. No matter what this person said, he would not be able to escape death. Let's leave first and let them repent on their own. Yi Qinghan saw that Tong Tong's chi had dissipated. He guessed that Tong Tong would not turn back into the heavy resentment death child. He then brought him and the divine bird out of the Incher's pot. When they reached the outside world, Xue Jiuhuang was waiting in the main hall. However, he was much more obedient now. He no longer had that arrogant look on his face. This was because he was sure that not only had the Snow Emperor's spirit been taken away, even the desolate slave had been taken away. Now that he thought about the God Lord's tragic end, there was no need to guess. If he dared to disrespect Yi Qinghan, his end would be even worse than the God Lord's. Yi Qinghan brought Tong Tong into the main hall. When he saw Xue Jiuhuang's respectful look, he smiled and said calmly, "Ninth Emperor, why are you looking for me?" "Xue Shui, how should we deal with the divine sect and heavenly hall?" Divine sect has its own territory and the main sect knows its location. However, heaven is a cunning rabbit with 3 burrows. It is impossible to find their headquarters. If we capture their leader like this, won't it cause great chaos? Xue Jiuhuang sighed and said helplessly. As for heaven, I have my own way of dealing with it. Ninth Emperor, you don't have to worry about it. However, Divine Sect has continuously assassinated the high officials of Divine Nation, the Prince, and the commander of the Snow Domain Army. Their crimes are unforgivable. I'll have to trouble Ninth Emperor to personally capture all of Divine Sect's people and bring them to me. Those below the giant god realm can be sent to the border to mine. Yi Qinghan determined the fate of Divine Sect with one sentence. Xue Jiuhuang clenched his fists and thought for a moment before asking seriously, Mr. Ling Yan has a good relationship with Divine Sect. The first God Lord of Divine Sect is still wandering around. Once they return, I'm afraid that it will be difficult to explain. When they return, I will explain it to them. Ninth Emperor, you just have to take revenge for Commander Shui. Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Seeing that Yi Qinghan was determined, Shui Jiuhuang did not stop him. He wanted to take this opportunity to destroy Divine Sect and take over the authority of the imperial family. Chapter 1362. That day, Shui Nine Emperor took Yi Qinghan's Snow World Army commander seal and mobilized 1,000,000 Snow World Army soldiers. Even his own 9 Emperor residence's personal guards were mobilized. The Hunting Eagle elite team also secretly followed and headed straight for Divine Sect. Yi Qinghan knocked on the table as Xiaoye quickly walked in. Mobilize all the assassins in hell. I want to destroy heaven, Yi Qinghan said firmly. Okay. Xiaoye replied without hesitation. Thunder God's lightning hammer, use it first. Give me the materials you bought and the materials you collected before. When heaven is destroyed, I will help you make a handy pseudo-world artifact. Yi Qinghan took out the Thunder God's hammer and gave it to Xiaoye. Xiaoye was excited as she looked at Yi Qinghan with admiration. Her eyes glowed as she said excitedly, I want a dagger and a glove to make a pseudo-world artifact. Yi Qinghan nodded. Seeing Xiaoye's admiring gaze, his lips curled into a smile. Xiaoye shyly threw down a dozen pseudo-world artifact materials and turned to leave the hall. Jingtian. Yi Qinghan put away the materials and said to the door. Yes. Jiang Jingtian stepped into the hall with a dignified appearance. Help me inform the Wang family to capture all the women in the Fragrance Pavilion in Snow Country's Divine World. Do not miss anyone, including the Pavilion Master. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. He wanted to uproot everyone in the beautiful Sky Pavilion and turn the Lich King into a general without an army. Okay. Jiang Jingtian's words were worth 1,000 gold. He was a man of few words and left the hall after receiving the mission. Divine Sect, Heaven, and Beautiful Sky Pavilion. Yi Qinghan declared war on the 3 major powers at the same time to take down Snow Country's Divine World in one blow. As for the Wang family, they didn't even know they were being played. In the end, they wouldn't even know how they died. On the 3rd day, the Wang clan and the Infernal Realm had finished their preparations and were ready to strike at any time. They were just waiting for Yi Qinghan to say the word. Yi Qinghan dragged the Heaven Leader out and took off his mask. He discovered that he was a rather charming middle-aged man. He was very handsome and cultured. What is your name? Yi Qinghan sat in the main hall, looking down at the kneeling Heaven's Leader. The Heavenly Hall Leader was terrified and replied with a trembling voice, replying to the Lord, this junior is Li Yifeng. Yi Qinghan clenched his right fist and pressed it against his head. Leaning against the chair, he asked in a low voice, who is Li Yuan to you? It's my ancestor. So you know him. Li Yifeng's eyes lit up, as if he had found a way out of this predicament. The corners of Yi Qinghan's mouth quirked up, his expression cold. Li Yuan, I don't just know him. During the Battle of the Great Wasteland Domain, this man had assassinated many of his trusted generals. He. I do. And we're old acquaintances. Yi Qinghan laughed hoarsely, it was unknown whether he was happy or sad. So Senior knows my ancestor. This junior is terrified, to actually listen to a villain and cause trouble for you. Li Yifeng knelt on the ground, his heart was excited, but he did not dare to show it. No matter, since you're Li Yuan's child, I won't fuss over it. Tell me, where did your ancestor go, why haven't I seen him for so many years? Yi Qinghan asked indifferently. He, Mr. Ling Yan and some of the top existences from back then had gone to some dangerous places to train, and have not returned yet. Li Yifeng bowed and replied. Yi Qinghan nodded as if nothing had happened, and asked casually, I remember that Heaven's headquarters was set up under the walls of Clear Sky Pass, is it still there now? Li Yifeng was shocked. Heaven's headquarters, other than some assassins, no one knew where it was, including those assassins. When they went out, they would be brought out with their eyes covered and sent to a branch, only then would they have the opportunity to move freely. It was impossible for outsiders to know. No matter how much Li Yuan trusted someone, it was impossible for him to tell others about the headquarters. "Senior, how did you know?" Li Yifeng asked in shock. Yi Qinghan slowly stood up, his eyes looking down at Li Yifeng. From his expression, he could already guess that Heaven's headquarters had not moved, and was still in an underground palace under the city walls. "Because I'm very familiar with Li Yuan, and have a life-and-death relationship with him." Yi Qinghan's eyes were cold, his big hand grabbed the air, directly grabbing Li Yifeng's mask in his hand, and gently put it on his face. His body slightly twisted, and actually looked exactly like Li Yifeng, except that his clothes were black, while Li Yifeng liked white. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, his divine power transformed into white clothes, his appearance imposing, his aura faintly discernible, his black hair fluttering, and he actually looked exactly like Li Yifeng. "Do I look like you?" At this moment, even Yi Qinghan's voice changed, completely merging with Li Yifeng, as if they were one person. Li Yifeng's hair stood on end, he was extremely frightened, and he roared hoarsely, "Senior, what are you doing? Let heaven go to hell." Yi Qinghan ruthlessly slapped Li Yifeng, then casually threw him into the Insur's gourd. "No. Senior. You can't do this." Within the Insur's gourd, Li Yifeng raised his head and roared, his eyes red, but Yi Qinghan did not respond. "Ha ha ha." The Divine Master sneered at Li Yifeng's crazy appearance, as if he was taking pleasure in his misfortune. "Bastard, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have offended him. If I were to kill you." Boom! Li Yifeng directly attacked the Divine Master, the two began to fight in the Insur's gourd, incomparably crazy, every move was fatal, not giving face at all. However, Li Yifeng was only good at assassination, how could he be a match for the Divine Master? Soon, he was at a disadvantage. Yi Qinghan was in control of everything, he watched the fight in the Insur's gourd with interest. When he saw Li Yifeng fall, he gave him a long sword, and it was not a low-grade one. The Divine Master was bare-handed, his advantage instantly turned into defeat. Yi Qinghan watched the two's performance with great interest, dog eat dog, killing each other. When the divine sex experts were captured, then the Hell's assassins were captured. That would be fun. When Li Yuan and the divine sex first patriarch returned, their expressions would definitely be interesting to see. Yi Qinghan stood up, looking at the eccentric sect's solemn expressions, he suddenly laughed, "Attack, an all-out war, destroy Yantian Pavilion, divine sect, and heaven. The show has only just begun." The eccentric sect's people burst into laughter. They had waited for this day for too long. Once they controlled the snow country and the divine realm, they could naturally cultivate with all their might. With the snow country as their foundation, it was enough to throw the 7 realms into chaos, let them dog eat dog, and die without even knowing how they died. Only in the end would they regret and regret. The hatred of the past was not something that could be resolved by destroying that group of people, but by making them grit their teeth in regret. "I'll go first, target Qing Tian Pass." Yi Qinghan put on his mask, tore through the void, and left. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye, galloping in the void, holding the white clouds in his hand, stepping on the firmament, and reaching out to touch the stars. Today, he was getting married at the bride's place. Chapter 1363. At the same time, the Wang family mobilized countless experts from all the major counties to surround the Fragrance Pavilion and capture the beauties without any reason. The Fragrance Pavilion originally belonged to the Wang family. The female assassins of the Yantian Pavilion did not understand and did not know whether to resist or not. In the end, they were sealed in their spiritual space. However, with so many Fragrance Pavilions in the world, there were still some who resisted. The female assassins killed many of the Wang family's experts. The Wang family was furious and joined forces with the experts of various counties to suppress them. Those who dared to resist were killed without mercy. In a split second, blood flowed like a river. Countless people died. Boom! Boom! The Snow Realm army surrounded the extreme north from all directions, which was the territory of the Snow God sect. The million-strong army was advancing step by step. With Xue Zhehuang as the commander, they soon firmly controlled the experts of the Snow God sect within the inner sect. 3 days later, Yi Qinghan appeared in the Clear Sky Fortress. The Clear Sky City was located on the Clear Sky Plateau. The blue sky and white clouds were within reach. It was indescribably beautiful. Clouds and mist lingered around the city like a fairyland. The great wall-like city wall extended long and rugged like a huge dragon, overflowing with majesty. Who would have thought that there was a huge underground palace under the Clear Sky Fortress? It was like an underground world with countless assassins. If they all attacked, it was enough to destroy the entire Wang family. Yi Qinghan only knew that heaven was under the walls of the Clear Sky Fortress, but he did not know where the entrance was. Therefore, he was not in a hurry and quietly appeared in the city. Looking at the experts in the city and the people on the streets, he wanted to find the assassins of heaven. Looking around, he did not find anyone from heaven even after searching for a long time. Yi Qinghan walked on the official road as if nothing had happened. He wore a cloak and his white clothes fluttered in the wind. He had a more temperament than Li Yifeng. Especially his back, it attracted the attention of the crowd. Along the way, everyone was discussing the changes in Divine Sect and the Wang family. Some people were rejoicing in their misfortune. The Wang family and Divine Sect were high and mighty. Now that something had happened, the Wang family was killing each other and cutting off one of their own arms. This made people curious. They didn't understand why the Wang family would suddenly attack the fragrance pavilion. Yi Qinghan heard this and smiled without saying anything. The Yantian pavilion had been destroyed. The Wang clan would need at least 100 years to recover. By then, the Wang clan would no longer have the right to speak. As for the Shenzong sect, the great elders had come out of seclusion and confronted Xue Zhehuang. However, they did not want to fight to the death. Xue Zhehuang did not want to fight to the death with these people either. Otherwise, there would be too many casualties. Yi Qinghan was not worried about Xue Zhehuang. Xue Zhehuang was the former commander of the Snow Border Army, an existence even stronger than Marshal Xue. He had once commanded an army of tens of thousands and could even guard the borders. Destroying the Divine Sect was not a problem. Yi Qinghan lowered his head and walked forward. He was lost in thought. His back seemed lonely. Just at this moment, a skinny boy bumped into his waist. His little hand was as fast as lightning. He wanted to reach out and take away the ancient jade pendant on his waist. That was Li Yifeng's signature clothing. Yi Qinghan looked at the boy in confusion. He released a wave of divine power from his body and sent the boy flying. "Be careful, he's a thief." Immediately after, a crisp voice sounded in Yi Qinghan's ear. A frail little girl reached out and grabbed Yi Qinghan's hand as if to remind him. Yi Qinghan did not think too much about it and retreated to the side with the little girl. However, the moment the little girl touched Yi Qinghan, she silently took away his jade pendant. If not for Yi Qinghan's strong spiritual sense, he might have been tricked by her. Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched. He did not expose her and only smiled, "Thank you for the reminder. It's fine. Uncle, be careful. There are many thieves here." The little girl was like a fairy. After she succeeded, she smiled and turned to run. Her simple skirt fluttered as she quickly disappeared. Yi Qinghan looked in the direction the little girl had disappeared in and smiled. His figure flickered as he followed after her. In a small alley, the little girl and the little boy met up and clapped their hands to celebrate their success. Today's harvest can be exchanged for some Emperor energy pills. The little girl said excitedly. The little boy was very young, about 5 or 6 years old. He looked at the jade pendant and licked his lips. It seemed like he wanted to eat something delicious. His eyes were bright and full of expression. Sister, I'm hungry. The little boy's tender voice sounded. Let's go and claim the credit. Sister will bring you to eat something good later. The little girl excitedly pulled the little boy's hand and skipped towards the end of the alley. However, she did not know that Yi Qinghan had already appeared behind her. Yi Qinghan grinned. Since he could not find the entrance to heaven, it was not a bad idea to follow the little girl and see what was going on. As the saying goes, everything has its cause and effect. Even if there was no good karma, helping others was the foundation of happiness. The little girl did not notice Yi Qinghan's trace and left the alley with the little boy. Yi Qinghan followed far behind and watched the two children enter a dilapidated courtyard. There were children everywhere in the courtyard. There were also a few middle-aged men with fierce faces. The children in the courtyard were dressed in rags and their eyes were filled with panic and fear when they looked at the middle-aged men. Those who didn't get anything today are not allowed to eat. A bunch of trash. I've raised you for so long, but you didn't even steal a decent treasure. A middle-aged man with a fierce face glared at them. The scar on his face was shocking. The children trembled in fear. Their bodies were covered in whip scars and they were as thin as sticks. It was obvious that they had been in a state of starvation all year round. The little girl brought the little boy into the courtyard. Her eyes were somewhat timid as she extended her hand and handed over the jade pendant. It was filled with profound laws and was full of spirit chi. It was definitely a precious treasure. Good treasure. The scarred man's eyes lit up and passed the jade pendant to the others. They looked around and their eyes were filled with excitement. Reward her with 10 Emperor energy pills and 10 Earth-ranked divine stones. The scarred man nodded and was very satisfied as he rewarded the little girl with a lot of wealth. It was enough for her to eat and drink for a period of time. Yi Qinghan stood at the top of a pavilion in the distance and looked down at the courtyard. He looked at the scarred man coldly but did not take back the jade pendant. The scarred man brought the jade pendant to an old shop. The old man of the pawn shop looked at the jade pendant with a cold glint in his eyes. He looked at the scarred man and the jade pendant before giving him 100 pieces of snow-ranked divine stones. When the scarred man left in high spirits, the old man of the pawn shop signaled a servant with his eyes and then left alone. Yi Qinghan's divine senses covered half of the clear sky keep. Not even the wind could escape his eyes. When he saw the old man leave with the jade pendant, he couldn't help but smile. I'll wait for you guys here. Yi Qinghan muttered to himself as he watched the scarred man return to the courtyard. He only handed over 40 pieces of snow-ranked divine stones and distributed them to everyone. He hid most of them himself. Chapter 1364. The knife-scarred man hid most of the snow-stepped god stones and only gave them 40 pieces. Yi Qinghan smiled and didn't say anything as he watched them happily splitting the loot. They didn't know that they were about to die. Even if he didn't do anything today, the people of heaven would beat them to death. The servant who followed the knife-scarred man quietly arrived outside the courtyard. He didn't want to alert the enemy, but instead, he kept watch from a distance and informed the shop owner. The shop owner had already taken the jade pendant to Heaven's Branch, which was a luxurious mansion inside Clear Sky Keep. The person who received him was the branch leader, a middle-aged man with a gentle demeanor. He was the representative of heaven and was only in charge of external business. Normally, when contacting the major forces, they would go through him. His cultivation wasn't very good, but his status was different. He was known as 13th Master. When he saw the jade pendant in the old man's hand, a cold light flashed and he snatched it away. This is Master's jade pendant. Where did you get it? 13th Master's elegant face revealed a trace of shock and anger as he asked coldly. My lord, this old man felt that something was wrong when I saw this jade pendant. It was exchanged by a knife-scarred man, a famous hoodlum in the keep. I've already asked the servant to follow him. The shop owner quickly replied. At this moment, the communication talisman on the old man's waist flashed. He opened it and was immediately overjoyed. My lord, I've already confirmed their location. They are in a courtyard in the refugee cave in the east of the city. 13th Master's mouth twitched. He shouted to the few burly men outside, gather the men and surround the courtyard. Find out how Master's jade pendant ended up in their hands. Yes. The people in this branch were all powerful guards, and there was no lack of giant gods among them. There were also some top-notch superior gods among them. About 100 people rushed toward the courtyard house in the east of the city under Lord 13th's lead. 13th Master was a person of the underworld and had connections with both the underworld and the underworld. Especially in the vicinity of Clear Sky Keep, no one dared to disrespect him. If they all moved out, nothing good would come out of it. The people on the street all made way and didn't dare to block their path. Yi Qinghan was sitting leisurely on the roof of a loft. He took a table full of divine fruits and wine and drank with the divine bird. Divine bird, let me make a bet with you. I can sneak into heaven. Yi Qinghan took a sip of wine and said confidently. You have the nerve to show off in front of me with this kind of retarded action. As long as this divine bird wills it, entering heaven is just a matter of waving my wings. The divine bird said disdainfully. Yi Qinghan could not be bothered with the divine bird. It was as if the bottom of the Qing Tian keep was made of a complete piece of steel. There was no gap to be found. If it was so easy to enter the heavens, there would be no need to resort to schemes to lure out the people of the heavens. All right, this method of luring the snake out of its hole is indeed very clever. The divine bird looked at Yi Qinghan's mocking expression and could only flap its wings in approval. Yi Qinghan didn't say anything. He watched as the 13th Master led a large number of experts from the center of the city towards the east of the city. Yi Qinghan removed the banquet, drew his sword, and left. His silhouette flickered and appeared in the courtyard. The courtyard was filled with joy, but it was enveloped by Yi Qinghan's gloomy and cold aura. The knife-scarred man was shocked. He drew his sword and pointed it at Yi Qinghan. He scolded coldly, "Who are you?" Puchi. Yi Qinghan's sharp sword swiped through the air and pierced through the knife-scarred man's throat. His speed was as fast as lightning. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan didn't give the burly men any chance to retaliate. They were all killed in an instant. Bang! The moment Yi Qinghan killed everyone, he knelt on one knee and spat out a mouthful of blood. His sword stabbed into the ground as if he was heavily injured. The group of children retreated in fear, especially the little girl and the little boy. They recognized Yi Qinghan. They didn't expect that stealing a jade pendant would cause the death of so many people. Yi Qinghan was obviously pretending. Previously, the Lord of Heaven, Li Yifeng, and Yi Qinghan had a huge battle. If Yi Qinghan came back unscathed, it wouldn't make sense. Moreover, if he pretended to be heavily injured and unconscious, it would save him a lot of trouble. The 13th Master might even contact the emissaries of heaven to bring him directly to the underground city. After killing the burly men and confirming that the children weren't a threat, Yi Qinghan pretended to be unconscious and fell to the ground. Blood flowed everywhere. The servant outside was stunned. Yi Qinghan attacked too quickly and fell to the ground too quickly. He didn't even have time to react. Ah! The little girl and the little boy screamed in fear. Perhaps it was because the little girl was slightly older, but just as she was about to organize the children to leave this place, the servant rushed into the courtyard and stopped them with his sword. Don't move. The servant warned coldly. The children trembled and looked at the servant. The servant looked at Yi Qinghan. He wanted to take off his cloak to take a closer look, but he didn't dare to. He could only wait for the shopkeeper to come over. Soon, the 13th master led the shopkeeper and 100 burly men to surround the courtyard. Bang! The door to the courtyard house was kicked open by Lord 13. When he saw a white-clothed man lying in a pool of blood on the ground, he couldn't help being shocked. He immediately rushed over and took off his cloak. When he saw the mask of the Lord of Heaven, he was shocked. How did the Lord suffer such heavy injuries? These people obviously can't cause any harm to the Lord. The 13th master took Yi Qinghan's pulse and found that his life force was about to dissipate. He couldn't help but turn around and glare at the servant. The servant was also shocked. He quickly knelt down and shook his head. "My lord, the Lord instantly killed them when he came in. However, after killing them, he coughed up blood and fell to the ground. This little one doesn't understand either, 13th master. It might be that the Lord was already heavily injured. After using his divine energy, his injuries worsened and he fainted." The shopkeeper hurriedly guessed. This sentence reminded 13th master of something. 13th master frowned and thought for a moment before muttering to himself, "A few days ago, I heard that Lord and Divine Sex Master were captured. Could it be that Lord desperately escaped but was heavily injured?" However, the 13th master quickly calmed down and said to the burly men behind him, "Quick, carry the Lord back to the branch. I'll go invite the Lord emissary over." With that, the 13th master quickly left. Yi Qinghan didn't move at all. He didn't even release his divine sense. He was only waiting for the emissary of heaven to come. Within the courtyard, several burly men carried a palanquin and carried Yi Qinghan back to the heaven branch. The dozen or so children in the courtyard were also brought back. In less than an hour, 3 emissary-level experts appeared in the heaven branch. Seeing Yi Qinghan's figure, mask, and the jade pendant, they didn't suspect anything. They reached out and took Yi Qinghan's pulse. They found that the life force in his body had dissipated. His flesh and blood were collapsing. He wasn't just heavily injured, he was on the verge of death. It is indeed the Lord. Bring him back and ask the Lord emissary to help. Perhaps he can be saved. One of the emissaries said firmly. With that, one of the emissaries carried Yi Qinghan on his back. One of the emissaries walked at the back and one at the front. They were extremely vigilant and quickly rushed out of the clear sky fortress. Chapter 1365. Outside the clear sky fortress, Yi Qinghan was on the back of an emissary, unable to use his divine sense. At such a close distance, he would be easily discovered, so he used the emissary's footsteps and the direction of the wind to determine the route. His powerful soul and discernment made him seem like a heavenly eye. Out of the city, we've traveled a total of 18 miles and made 3 right turns. There's no wind. There should be a mountain range in front of us. This is a valley, the mountain is 100 zhang tall. Yi Qinghan secretly calculated the terrain of this place. At this moment, there was the sound of water splashing. However, the emissary's divine power had been released, and he avoided the water as he dove downwards. By a rough estimate, he had reached the bottom of the lake after 300 feet. Boom! A huge stone door was raised, but an emissary blocked the water flow. Not even a drop of water could enter the passage. The 3 emissaries led Yi Qinghan into the underground palace through the passage. The underground palace was not dim at all. In fact, it was a world of its own. The scorching sun was high in the sky, and the landscape was picturesque. There were rivers, mountains, and birds. Everything one could imagine was there. Clouds and mist lingered on the mountainside, and water vapor rose from the river. Spiritual energy soared to the sky. This was definitely a holy land for cultivation. The vast underground palace was covered by the dome of heaven. It did not look like an underground palace at all, but more like a holy land for cultivation. Countless ancient buildings occupied the mountainside or the foot of the mountain. There was a huge palace at the peak that seemed to be suspended in mid-air. Occasionally, people would fly up. There were many experts on the ground, but they were all very low-key. The hard-working elites were faintly discernible, but the moment the three emissaries appeared with Yi Qing Han on their backs, they all quieted down. The entire underground palace was in a state of silence. Everyone was focused on Yi Qing Han on the emissaries. Quickly informed the Grand Elder. The Lord has been severely injured and his vitality has dissipated. The leader of the emissaries shouted in a deep voice. Hua! In the eyes of these assassins, Li Yifeng was like a god. Now that he was severely injured, it was somewhat inconceivable. But soon, someone quickly headed into the depths of the underground palace, while the three emissaries led Yi Qing Han into the floating palace at the top of the clouds. The floating palace was like a palace hall. Outside was a flat square, and inside was a deep palace. It was about 100 meters long and 80 meters wide. More than a dozen towering pillars stood proudly. The dragon throne was in the north, and behind the throne was a statue of an ancient beast. It was incomparably majestic, and its two eyes seemed to be alive, filled with pressure. Yi Qing Han was placed flat on the stone slab. The three emissaries waited anxiously. At this moment, Yi Qing Han released a bit of his spiritual perception and surveyed his surroundings. The main hall came into view. In less than half an hour, 4 super powerhouses appeared in the main hall. They looked old and decrepit, but they were full of vigor. Their cultivation levels were all ultimate powerhouses, and they were much stronger than ordinary ultimate powerhouses. They had lived through countless years, and had even witnessed the Great Barren War. Their eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of history, and their backs projected the rings of time. All of you, get out. An old man said in a serious tone. The three emissaries did not dare to disobey the Grand Supreme Elder's orders. They hurriedly bowed and left. There were only 5 people left in the room. Yi Qing Han did not dare to be careless. He tightened his soul. His flesh and blood were scattered, and his soul was on the verge of death. If he was exposed here, he would be exhausted to death by these assassins, even with the pseudo-world artifact, the Inshur's pot. The 4 Grand Supreme Elders stared at Yi Qing Han. One of them reached out and took off his mask. His face was identical to Li Yifeng's, but his face was pale and devoid of color. Even if there were some flaws, they were covered by his ferocious expression. The Grand Supreme Elder looked at Li Yifeng's pained expression and bent down to hold Yi Qing Han's wrist. His spiritual perception entered his body through his blood vessels, and his expression turned ugly. His physical body's life force has been scattered. His life force source seems to have used some forbidden technique, causing it to be severely damaged. If he does not use his foundation, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to survive. The Grand Supreme Elder said in a deep voice. In order to hide this from the Grand Supreme Elders, Yi Qing Han had really gone all out. He had severed his own life force, and all his flesh and blood had been scattered by himself. However, it was still within his range of control. If he wanted to recover, he would need some time. Take out the Supreme God pellets. This is a critical period. We cannot give up on him. After all, he represents the Orthodox Heavenly Hall. The second elder said with a frown. The other 3 Grand Supreme Elders thought for a moment and nodded solemnly. The Grand Supreme Elder sighed and said, "Sigh, the Supreme God pellets are 6 of the supreme life-saving divine medicines bestowed by the Supreme Realm Lord. They are definitely able to revive the dead, regrow flesh and bones. Now, there are only 4 left. If we use one more. However, there's no other way. Let's use it. He won't be able to retain his life force." The 4 old men walked towards the huge beast behind the dragon throne. The 4 of them exerted their strength at the same time, and 4 rays of divine light shot into the huge beast's eyes. The huge beast opened its mouth and spat out a brocade box. The material of the box was special. Light flowed within the box, but there wasn't any smell from the outside. Yi Qinghan's brows twitched. The divine bird could no longer hold back and wanted to rush out of his body. He had no choice but to take the initiative to suppress this bastard. Shwa! The Grand Supreme Elder quickly opened the brocade box. A fragrance filled the air, and the aura of life filled the air. The entire hall was like a swamp of life. Yi Qinghan was overjoyed. He didn't expect there to be such an unexpected harvest. He suppressed the joy on his face, but on the surface, he still looked like he was in great pain. The Grand Supreme Elder pried open Yi Qinghan's mouth and placed a divine pellet inside. The moment it entered his mouth, it melted. Boundless life force spread throughout his body, automatically healing his injuries. Boom! 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 His injuries were forcefully healed by the divine pellet. The boundless life force even brought along a despair-inducing life force to attack the bottleneck of his cultivation. If he couldn't break through the bottleneck, just this life force alone was enough to destroy the body of a supreme god. Divine medicine turned into a dead medicine. Yi Qinghan allowed the life force to flow through his body. The life force in his body, including his soul, was cleansed by the boundless life force. His injuries were quickly healing. The bottleneck of the high level was incomparably firm. Under the impact of the boundless life force, it actually became somewhat unstable. Time passed bit by bit. Yi Qinghan was in great pain from the impact of the life force. After all, he had just entered the high level. How long had it been since he broke through to the pinnacle? Fortunately, Yi Qinghan's soul was extremely powerful. His comprehension of the pinnacle was also sufficient. In addition to the support of the life force, and the 4 Grand Supreme Elders poured in a huge amount of divine power, he actually entered the pinnacle of the paramount realm in just a short 2 hours. Unexpectedly, Yi Qinghan moved his fingers. Finally, he could move. He began to actively mobilize the energy in his body. His aura erupted, filling the hall. The power grew stronger and stronger, causing the 4 Grand Supreme Elders to frown. They were somewhat suspicious. Li Yifeng's divine power couldn't be so strong. It was dense, boundless, domineering, and powerful. However, they subconsciously attributed this situation to the effect of the Supreme God Pellet. Chapter 1366. Yi Qinghan's countless years of comprehension allowed him to enter the highest realm in a short period of time. He opened his eyes slightly, and his aura was completely different from Li Yifeng's. The 4 elders looked at Yi Qinghan suspiciously. They felt that he wasn't the master of heaven, but whether it was his appearance or divine power, he was exactly the same as Li Yifeng. The 4 experts looked at each other. Is it because of the Supremacy God pill? The first Supreme Elder muttered. It should be. He is indeed Li Yifeng. His clothes, jade pendant, appearance, divine power ripples, only his aura is different. Another elder said. At this time, Yi Qinghan slightly opened his eyes, emitting a God-King radiance. He glanced around the hall before finally fixing his gaze on the 4 elders. Yifeng greets the 4 ancestors. I didn't expect to alarm you all. Yifeng is sorry. Yi Qinghan bowed and said guiltily. I even wasted a Supremacy God pill. I'm ashamed to face the ancestors. At this time, the 4 Grand Elders heaved a sigh of relief. Other than Li Yifeng, who else knew about the 4 of them? Who else knew about the Sovereign God pill? How did you suffer such heavy injuries? The first elder frowned and asked. Great Ancestor, a few days ago, Divine Sect Master and I tried to kill Zhuofeng together. In the end, we failed and were captured by him. If I didn't use the heaven-shifting technique, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to return. Yi Qinghan bitterly smiled. The four elders no longer had any doubts. The heaven-shifting technique was heaven's life-saving technique. It could instantly break through the heavens and earth. Other than the upper echelons, even some of the internal envoys didn't know about it. Where did this Suafeng come from? How could he defeat you and divine sect master? The first supreme elder asked in shock. During that battle, several powerful pseudo-world weapons appeared. There were 3 of them in the left general's residence. I didn't have a pseudo-world weapon. The divine sect master's pseudo-world weapon wasn't of much use. In the end, we were taken away by the Inshur's pot. I broke through the shackles in an instant and fought for my life with the Inshur's pot. That was why I was heavily injured, Yi Qinghan explained faintly. The hall was silent for a while. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and said, "The left marshal's residence will not give up on hunting me down. Mobilize all the masters to reinforce Qing Tian Pass and fight to the death with Suafeng. If we gather all the Heavenly Hall's experts in Clear Sky Pass, won't we be giving them a chance to kill us all in one fell swoop?" First Supreme Elder asked with a frown. Yi Qinghan shook his head. "Suafeng and I have a personal grudge. He won't mobilize the border army to attack us. The divine sect is different. The Divine Lord killed Prince Shui. This is treason." The 4 elders didn't refute, so Yi Qinghan ordered all the Heavenly Hall's giant gods and above to gather in Clear Sky Pass. 10 days later, the experts of Clear Sky Pass gathered. The Heavenly Hall's experts all returned to defend, but they didn't know that the experts of the Infernal Realm and the Insane Sect were secretly approaching Clear Sky Pass. Yi Qinghan was in the underground palace, absorbing god pills to further his cultivation. In just 10 short days, he had used up all of the top-quality materials in the Heaven of Heaven, and his cultivation base had advanced significantly. Now, he could use the Inshur's kettle as if it were his heart's desire. In fact, he could even take a peak paramount god with him. The 4 elders returned to seclusion in the depths of the underground city. They had lived for so long that they were on the verge of becoming Dao Lords. If not for Li Yifeng being heavily injured and on the verge of death, they wouldn't have come out. Yi Qinghan was in charge of everything in the underground city. He summoned the emissaries to his palace and collected them all into the Inshur's pot. In less than a day, none of the emissaries managed to escape. Li Yifeng, who was inside the Yin clan's gourd, cursed Yi Qinghan like a madman. Together with the Heaven's emissary assassins, they attacked the Divine Master. The Divine Master was on the verge of death, but Yi Qinghan didn't allow them to kill the Divine Master. 3 days later, the hundreds of giant gods in the underground city were also collected into the Inshur's pot. Aside from the elders and those who had reached the end of their lives, the underground city was now empty. Yi Qinghan chuckled and left the underground city. He didn't disturb the Dao Lords who were on the verge of becoming Dao Lords, because they were the truly terrifying existences of the Heavenly Hall. If they fought to the death, Yi Qinghan would lose a layer of skin. Back at the Clear Sky Keep, Yi Qinghan contacted Guangzhong in Xiaoye. They were already close to the Clear Sky Keep. Yi Qinghan forcefully opened the Clear Sky Keep's gate from the inside. Guangzhong and the Hell's assassins worked together to attack the Clear Sky Keep and started a brutal massacre. Guangzhong had the advantage of weapons. The 3 pseudo-world weapons and Xiaoye's Thunder God's hammer rushed into the enemy group with lightning speed and razed the Clear Sky Keep to the ground. Murderous aura filled the sky as blood flowed like a river. Lightning flashed in the sky and dark clouds covered the sky. Occasionally, a spear shadow would pierce through everything and penetrate the city walls. The outside of the Clear Sky Keep was a pile of rubble. More than half of the innocent people were killed or injured, let alone the Heavenly Hall's assassins. Yi Qinghan collected all the experts into the Inshur's pot and killed everyone below the giant god level. Not a single one was left alive. As the saying went, if you cut the grass without removing the roots, it would grow again when the spring breeze blew. With the support of the 4 pseudo-world weapons, the reinforcements from the Heavenly Hall were all killed. After destroying the outside forces of the Heavenly Hall, Yi Qinghan brought the Guangzhong, Xiaoye, and the other experts to change into the Heavenly Hall's uniforms and rushed to the underground city. Although the underground city and the Clear Sky Keep were adjacent, one was above ground and the other was below ground, they were not the same world. The underground city was a small world that was created and refined separately. The underground city was completely unaware of the massacre happening above the city. The group of experts who were about to reach Tao assimilation were still in seclusion, hoping to prolong their lives. They did not know that other than these old immortals, the rest of the Heavenly Hall had fallen. The experts were captured and the weak were slaughtered. Yi Qinghan opened the underground city's tunnel and led a few hundred experts into the underground city. The rest are all people who are about to reach Tao assimilation. They do not have much hope for their lives. Don't fight them to the death. Use the pseudo-world weapons to kill them. The rest of you, maintain the space of the underground city. Don't let the underground city collapse and the small world be destroyed, dragging us into the space turbulence, Yi Qinghan said plainly. Okay. Many experts replied in unison. Yi Qinghan, Jiang Jingtian, Shi Gu, and Xiaoye walked at the front with their pseudo-world weapons. Mo Li, Li Feng, Hell Killer Si Wu, Ji Sha, Di Ling, and the other experts released their divine power and began to stabilize the space. Hundreds of experts maintained the space of the underground city. They were all first-rate experts and could at least maintain the stability of a small world. Boom! Jiang Jingtian soared into the sky and activated the powerful pseudo-world weapons with Shi Gu. The power of the world filled the underground city and tore through space and time. Bang! A spear pierced into the depths, destroying heaven and earth. Following that, Shi Gu activated a stone brick and smashed down an expert who was about to soar into the sky to cover Jiang Jingtian's attack. Hua hua hua. The thunder god's lightning hammer activated the power of thunder and lightning, turning it into thousands of lightning bolts to rob people of their vitality. Those who were about to reach Tao assimilation did not have much vitality and did not dare to resist the lightning bolts. Boom! In the depths, the 4 supreme elders flew into the sky and roared furiously. They looked at Yi Qinghan in the distance and realized that they had been tricked. They could not stop the destruction of the Heavenly Hall. Chapter 1367. I'm sorry, everyone. I've made you spend an extra cent today. I'll compensate you double the amount if you join the group. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry. Everyone, please remove the bookshelf first. Then, you'll be able to see the correct chapter. Chapter 1367, blotting out the sky. The underground city was like the end of the world. A spear pierced through the shackles and destroyed a mountain peak. Lightning flashed everywhere. Many great limit experts were swept away by the pseudo-world weapon before they could recover to their peak state, dying on the spot. There were more than 100 great limit experts hiding in the depths. However, they were struck by lightning as soon as they flew into the sky. Even if there were some lucky ones, they were killed by the world-piercing spear and the stone brick. The strong ones were heavily injured and fell to the ground. However, they were captured by Yi Qinghan. The 4 great elders were furious. They were at the peak of their recovery. Their extreme limit cultivation was able to resist the pseudo-world weapon. Their aura soared through the galaxy and flattened the underground palace. If it wasn't for Li Feng and the others maintaining the stability of the space in the underground palace, it would have been destroyed long ago. Boom! Jiang Jingtian was extremely powerful. He became one with his spear and pierced through the underground palace. The entire palace was shaking as he clashed with the great elder. Hua! A wave of energy swept away the great limit experts. Their bodies were shattered as the power of the world filled the surroundings. Bang! Jiang Jingtian was sent flying. However, The Great Elder was also sent flying while coughing up blood. His face was pale and his blood was unstable. At this moment, Yi Qinghan mobilized the power of the world to activate the Inshur's pot. A golden light shone and forcibly captured the Great Elder. Boom! 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 Xiaoya activated the Thunder God's hammer and destroyed the surroundings. Most of the attacks hit one of the Great Elders. Xiaoya, who possessed a pseudo-world artifact, was definitely not someone a great limit expert could contend against. She continued to attack, ignoring her injuries. She continued to exchange blows with the Grand Supreme Elder. In the blink of an eye, the Grand Supreme Elder was on the losing end. Most importantly, the Grand Supreme Elder still had to be on guard against Xiaoya. Unfortunately, the more he was on guard, the less he could fight Xiaoya with ease. With the stone brick in hand, Shi Ge smashed left and right. He managed to hold back the two elders for a short period of time, buying some time for Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan seized this opportunity and erupted once again, capturing Xiaoya's opponent. There were only two great elders left. At this time, Jiang Jingtian had already stabilized his body. He and Shi Ge were each dealing with a great elder. At that moment, Yi Qinghan finally launched an attack. His punch landed on a Supreme Elder's body, nearly shattering it. The Supreme Elder was sent flying thousands of meters away. Shi Ge then smashed a brick into his head, killing him on the spot. The final Supreme Elder wanted to tear open the void. However, Mo Li Feng and the others had joined forces to restrain the space, preventing him from doing so. In the end, he fell into the encirclement of the four great experts and was forcefully suppressed within the Yin clan's flask. Inside the flask, Li Feng's eyes were absent-minded. Seeing familiar faces being sucked into the Yin clan's flask, he knew that the Heavenly Hall was finished. In the end, the Heavenly Hall assassins in the flask vented all their resentment on the Divine Master. A group of people surrounded the Divine Master and beat him to his last breath. In the end, Yi Qinghan interfered again, separating the Divine Master and the Heavenly Hall experts. The Divine Master's body was tattered and tattered. He was incomparably furious, but he couldn't do anything to the Heavenly Hall people. Yi Qinghan entered the flask and saw the Divine Master and the Heavenly Hall people killing each other. He couldn't help but laugh. Sect Master Shui, is it because you can't beat them without anyone's help? Don't worry, I'll bring all the Divine Sect people in a few days, giving you a chance to take revenge. Zhuo Feng, you'll regret this. It's not your turn to make decisions in the divine realm of the Snow Empire. When Mr. Ling Yan returns, he'll definitely find the Supreme Realm Lord to uphold justice. You killed a meritorious servant, you'll definitely be destroyed by the Realm Lord. I don't care who you are. The Divine Master roared in anger. Yi Qinghan shrugged and said indifferently, it's fine. When your Realm Lord appears, I'll have already taken control of the divine realm of the Snow Empire. Who knows, he might even become my subordinate and help me attack the other 6 realms. What? You want to take control of the divine realm of the Snow Empire and attack the other 6 realms? At this time, Li Yifeng, the few Grand Elders and the Divine Master were stunned. They looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief and questioned him in unison. Why else do you think I want to take control of the divine realm of the Snow Empire? Yi Qinghan said lazily. After speaking, Yi Qinghan turned and was about to leave the Yin clan's flask. Wait. You want to attack the other 6 realms, why do you want to destroy us? We can help you. Li Yifeng said anxiously. Yi Qinghan laughed mockingly, to resist foreign aggression, one must first pacify the internal affairs. First, I need to ensure that there are no enemies in the divine realm of the Snow Empire before I can attack the other 6 realms. However, you guys have deep roots and will go against my will, so I can only uproot you superpowers. As for helping me, I need experts, not trash. After I capture everyone from the divine sect, I'll give heaven a chance. As long as you kill everyone from the divine sect, I'll let you follow me to conquer the other 7 realms. The people from heaven seemed to have grasped a way out, but the divine master looked at Yi Qinghan with hatred. Yi Qinghan looked down at the divine master coldly and smiled evilly. Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. Just because of Tong Tong's hatred, I'll torture you and make you watch as the divine sect is destroyed. Then, you'll die in despair. After speaking, Yi Qinghan turned and left the Yin clan's flask. Less than an hour later, the divine master recovered some of his divine power, but Yi Qinghan once again allowed the people from heaven to gang up on him. They would gang up on the divine master at least 7 or 8 times a day. The divine master couldn't sleep or rest. Sometimes, Yi Qinghan would even take the initiative to help the divine master recover his divine power so that he could protect himself. The divine master was forced into a corner. He didn't want to die and hoped that Ling Yan would come back and save him. He could only pass the difficult days while being beaten. 3 days later, Yi Qinghan appeared in the divine sect's territory. The Snow Empire's army surrounded the divine sect, but the inner sect's formation was too strong. It actually lasted until today. After Yi Qinghan appeared, Xue Zhehuang felt somewhat embarrassed. He didn't expect that after attacking the divine sect for so many days, they still couldn't take it down. The divine sect's roots are deep. The formation is a famous formation from the Desolate Era. The 9 Heavens God Sealing Formation uses the power of the firmament as a guide. It uses the power of the stars, sun, and moon to defend the divine sect. As long as the firmament is not destroyed and the sun, moon, and stars are still there, it is impossible to break the formation. It is normal that you can't break it in a short period of time. Yi Qinghan said calmly. How can I break the formation? Xue Zhehuang looked at the confident Yi Qinghan and asked curiously. Isolate the firmament and cover the sun, moon, and stars so that they can't reinforce the formation. Naturally, it will break by itself. Yi Qinghan smiled coldly. He soared into the sky and looked down at the inner sect. It was only about 100 li. He immediately took out the Yinshir's pot. The pot's mouth expanded infinitely. However, when it expanded halfway, the divine power was insufficient. In the end, Xiaoye, Li Feng, Jiang Jingtian, Shi Gu, and the others used the pseudo-world artifact and poured the power of the world into Yi Qinghan's body. Boom! A divine light spread out for 100 li and covered the divine sect's inner sect completely. Although it couldn't take away the divine sect's inner sect, it was enough to block the firmament's power and the light of the sun, moon, and stars. The divine light covered the sky and the sun. The divine sect's inner sect formation was quickly shattered by the Snow Empire's army and became a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Chapter 1368. Everyone, please remove the Quang Wuzhan bookshelf first, then add it back to the bookshelf. You will see the correct chapter and update the wrong chapter. I'm really sorry. Everyone, please join the group. I'll pay you back double. Daodu sincerely apologizes. The divine sect was breached and became a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Facing the million-strong army, the experts of the insane sect, and the 4 pseudo-world weapons, resistance was futile. They couldn't cause any damage. The elders of the divine sect felt that the glory of the divine sect couldn't be thrown away. They would never surrender, but the Snow Realm army forcibly flattened the inner sect. Experts fell one after another. Some were seriously injured. After Yi Qinghan broke through the inner sect, the experts who couldn't resist were all captured by the Yinshir's pot. Even if they weren't injured, they couldn't resist the Yinshir's pot supported by the 4 pseudo-world weapons. Thousands of people struggled, but they were all sucked away. In just half an hour, only a few great elders of the divine sect were still struggling. They roared and threatened the Snow Realm army. However, the divine sect master assassinated the Snow Realm army's commander-in-chief and besieged the current left marshal several times. The Snow Realm army didn't need to worry about Ling Yen coming back. They simply massacred to avenge the commander-in-chief. The divine sect was flattened in a short period of time. The Falcon Squad took action, suppressing the Great Elders, and finally captured by Yi Qinghan. The divine sect was officially destroyed. Broken walls, rubble, corpses, and rivers of blood. The Archaean sect's resources had been plundered, but with the divine bird around, none of it was wasted. Dozens of treasure vaults had become the insane sect's resources. Coupled with the resources they had obtained from the Heavenly Hall, it was enough for all of the insane sect's experts to reach mid-level Paramount God. It could even allow the super elites to reach peak Supreme God or even the limit. The 2 Supreme Divine Pills were of utmost importance. Even in the desolate era, these life-saving divine pills were priceless treasures. Only the Realm Lord had the qualifications to refine them. At most, the medicine god Taoist would be able to refine them. Even the current Yi Qinghan couldn't refine them. After the destruction of the Snow God sect, the entire divine realm of the Snow Empire was in an uproar. The Snow God sect and the Heavenly Hall, the 2 superpowers, were uprooted. Some of the overlords and powerful sects offered their loyalty to the left martial manner, offering them large amounts of resources. Yi Qinghan accepted the gifts and prepared to send the insane sect into secluded cultivation so that all of them could become peak paramount gods. On the 3rd day after Yi Qinghan returned to the provincial capital, Wang Zhongjuan personally led the experts from God of Fortune City to escort hundreds of thousands of female assassins from Yantian Pavilion into the city and handed them over to Yi Qinghan. In order to express his gratitude, Yi Qinghan specially gave Wang Zhongjuan a supreme technique he obtained from Divine Sect. This made Wang Zhongjuan even more delighted with Yi Qinghan, but he didn't know that the Wang clan was about to meet its end. After the aces of the God of Fortune City retreated, Yi Qinghan gathered all the female assassins of the Yantian Pavilion. Most of them had very low cultivation. Perhaps they were forced to do so, or perhaps there were other reasons. For a moment, he did not know how to deal with them. The female assassin from the Yantian Pavilion was somewhat terrified. She didn't even understand how she had been exposed and how she had been eliminated by the Wang clan in one go. They were all top-notch women. It would be a pity to kill them, but he couldn't use them as assassins. Letting them go would be troublesome. Yi Qinghan scratched his head. Xiaoye curled her lips and mocked disdainfully, "What? You can't bear to kill them?" Yi Qinghan laughed awkwardly and said in a low voice, "Killing so many female cultivators at once is against the heavens. Moreover, most of them haven't completed their mission. They're all innocent people. If I kill them all, it'll be unfair. I'm not a homicidal maniac. I didn't know. I didn't see you say that when you destroyed Divine Sect in heaven," Xiaoye mocked. Slap. Yi Qinghan flew into a rage out of humiliation and slapped Xiaoye's soft butt. "I haven't taught you a lesson for a few days. You're going to break the rules again." Yi Qinghan deliberately scolded her with a straight face. Xiaoye was going crazy. She clenched her small fists and wanted to punch that arrogant and handsome face. "Tell me, how should we deal with them? After all, there are hundreds of thousands of people. We can't just dig a hole and bury them all, right?" Yi Qinghan asked the others helplessly, hoping for a good suggestion. Hundreds of thousands of women were indeed not easy to deal with. The group of people from Divine Sect turned their heads away from Yi Qinghan. Ever since they followed Yi Qinghan, they didn't like to use their brains. They only needed one person to do it. Yi Qinghan shook his head. If this group of people asked them to kill people, they would probably not hesitate. If they were asked to come up with an idea, they wouldn't even bother to use their brains. Bring them to the border and reward the army. The divine bird was not interested in women. If it was a female bird of the same clan, it might be able to raise its spirits. When Yi Qinghan heard this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Wasn't this kind of thing a waste? Xiaoye glared at the divine bird. She felt that it was insulting women and was very dissatisfied. The divine bird immediately shrank its head and went back into Yi Qinghan's bloodline. It turned into a trace of imprint and didn't come out again. Master, you put a seal on them. Let me manage them. Maybe they will be useful. At this time, Sister Yao came out. She couldn't bear to kill all the women of Yantian Pavilion, so she took the initiative to suggest. Yi Qinghan was suddenly happy. He felt that it was very reasonable. He began to put a seal on them one by one. Even if these women cooperated, it was still very tiring. After a day, they were exhausted to the extreme, but they still managed to seal more than 100,000 people. The next day, Yi Qinghan gave Sister Yao a separate piece of land outside the sacred city and let her lead these female assassins. Sister Yao knew part of Yi Qinghan's plan, so she asked for some of the True Force Domain's secret techniques for these female assassins to cultivate. She hoped that when they attacked the True Force Domain, they could assassinate some of the True Force Domain's experts. Yi Qinghan was reassured by Sister Yao's decision and provided some resources. He also found some of the True Force Domain's powerful techniques for these female assassins to cultivate. A few days later, Yi Qinghan began to reorganize the divine nation again. The ninth prince didn't dare to have any objections. Everything was decided by Yi Qinghan. Even Snow Nine Emperor didn't object because the Snow Emperor spirit and the Desolate Slave were in Yi Qinghan's hands. With Snow Nine Emperor's cooperation, it was very easy to reorganize the hundreds of states in the divine nation. The state lords were all handed over to trusted people. In a short time, the divine nation became Yi Qinghan's backyard. A large amount of resources were transported to the sacred city. The experts of the insane sect all entered seclusion, and the left marshal's residence quieted down. At this moment, even Xiao Yu and her subordinates were being nurtured. However, Yi Qinghan had forbidden the three of them. This made the three experts extremely angry, but there was nothing they could do. After Yi Qinghan finished dealing with everything, he took the initiative to look for the Snow Emperor spirit and the Desolate Slave. The Desolate Slave looked at Yi Qinghan with some reverence and even more fear. She didn't understand why Yi Qinghan had locked her and her daughter up. Yi Qinghan looked at the terrified Desolate Slave and couldn't help but sigh. "What is your name?" Yi Qinghan asked gently. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Huang Xian. The Desolate Slave knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise her head to look at Yi Qinghan. After being enslaved for so many years, she had lost all her dignity. The only person she could trust was Snow Nine Emperor. "Stand up and raise your head to look into my eyes. Tell yourself that you are no longer a slave. You are not allowed to kneel to anyone," Yi Qinghan said firmly. The Desolate Slave raised her head in fear and looked at Yi Qinghan. When she saw those eyes filled with willpower, she felt an indescribable confidence. She felt that she was no longer a slave. Chapter 1369. Yi Qinghan stared at the Desolate Slave's weak body and terrified expression. He felt extremely guilty. He did not know how many people in the Great Desolate Domain had been enslaved and locked up in some corner, suffering day and night. He did not know how many women of the Great Desolate Domain had become someone's plaything. The Snow Emperor's spirit was not afraid of Yi Qinghan. Instead, it was filled with reverence. It was as if it was reverence for a father. Its pair of intelligent eyes looked at Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan rubbed the Snow Emperor's spirit's head and took a deep breath. After stabilizing his emotions, he lowered his voice and said, "Huang Xian, you came from the bitter desolate prison. Do you know where it is? If I bring you to the extreme north region, can you find the entrance to the bitter desolate prison?" Huang Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. It was as if she wanted to see through Yi Qinghan's soul and find out why he wanted to find the entrance to the Great Desolate Domain. If he really wanted to find it, couldn't he just ask the Snow Nine Emperor? Yi Qinghan sighed and said, "Sigh, I want to save the survivors of the Great Desolate Domain." Obviously, I cannot let the Snow Nine Emperor know my goal. Otherwise, he will not listen to me. He might even hurt himself. If you want to save your people, think about the location of the bitter desolate prison. I will save them and send them back to the great desolate domain. Yi Qinghan's tone was firm. Huang Xian's eyes lit up. She looked at those big black eyes as if she was born to trust him. Huang Xian's entire body trembled, and she was extremely excited. She said in a hoarse voice, ****, this little girl knows the approximate location, but because I've been away from the bitter desolate prison for too long, I can't be sure of the exact location. I only know that it's in a mountain range in the northernmost part of the far north region. That place is a small world of its own, and it's extremely cold. There are a large number of criminals locked up outside, and the survivors of the Great Desolate are locked up inside. My clan no longer has any experts, and we're often bullied by those powerful criminals." Yi Qinghan's aura suddenly erupted. He clenched his fists and said to Tong Tong outside, "Tong Tong, accompany the Snow Emperor's spirit in the left general's residence. Do not go out. I will be back in a year if I am fast, 3 to 5 years if I am slow. You must cultivate well. Do not delay yourself. When I come back, I'll bring you to conquer the world. Don't drag me down." "Oh." Tong Tong nodded solemnly. Yi Qinghan picked up Huang Xian and used spatial shift to quickly leave the holy city. Spatial shift. After arriving at a big city, they used the spatial teleportation formation to teleport. After several months of continuous teleportation, they traversed more than half of the snow country and the divine realm. Finally, they appeared in a vast expanse of snowy plains and snow mountains. Heavy snow pervaded the air as icebergs soared into the sky. Violent winds danced about as snow covered the sky. There wasn't even a trace of life. There was no life left. Boom! Yi Qinghan brought Huang Xian into the ice and snow, shattering the layer of frozen snow. Divine power leaked out, helping her block the cold wind. "Tell me when you see that mountain. We can slowly search for it. There will be a chance to find the bitter desolate prison," Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Huang Xian weakly looked at Yi Qinghan. She didn't know who he was, but she knew that he was trustworthy, because the aura he gave off was as benevolent as a father's. "Senior, who are you? Can you tell me?" Huang Xian gazed at Yi Qinghan and asked expectantly. "You can't know now. You will naturally understand in the future," Yi Qinghan said coldly. It wasn't that he didn't trust Huang Xian, but that she was too weak and could be easily controlled. Yi Qinghan brought Huang Xian and flew at a moderate speed in the desolate snowy plains. He looked around, hoping to find the location of the bitter desolate prison as soon as possible so that he could bring his people back to the great wasteland domain and give them a home. The snowy mountains were steep, but most of them were the same. There wasn't even a hint of green, which was very eye-piercing. However, Huang Xian had a deep impression of the entrance to the bitter desolate prison, because her own people and parents were suffering there. She wanted to go back to the bitter desolate prison all the time. Even if she couldn't save them, she wanted to suffer with them. If she didn't have the Snow Emperor's spirit and Shui Feng as her children, she would rather have a falling out with the Snow Nine Emperor, or even die, than to live in the luxurious Nine Emperor's residence. However, the Snow Nine Emperor really loved her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked the extermination of his family to keep her. Huang Xian was very beautiful, so beautiful that she was untainted by even a speck of dust. She was like a supreme snow lotus on a snowy mountain. She was so beautiful that words couldn't describe her. Yi Qinghan didn't have any distracting thoughts. Facing Huang Xian was like facing his own daughter. There was only love and tenderness. It was completely different from the feelings he had for the Emperor Yi, let alone the sexual interest he had for Sister Yao. They didn't talk much along the way. The question Yi Qinghan asked the most was, "Is it this mountain? Is it familiar?" Looking at Huang Xian constantly shaking her head, Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with disappointment. However, every time he eliminated a place, Yi Qinghan's heart would become more excited. That feeling of anticipation became more and more excited. His black hair was fluttering in the wind. His vigorous face revealed a trace of determination. His deep eyes seemed to have seen the endless years, turning up page after page of history. Yi Qinghan brought Huang Xian through thousands of mountains and tens of thousands of piles of snow. He was a little tired. This northernmost continent didn't have any spiritual essence or spiritual energy. It was pure snow, which wasn't suitable for humans to live in. It couldn't even restore his divine power. If he didn't bring a large amount of resources, his divine power would have dried up long ago. He didn't know how long they had searched, because this place was covered in snow. There was no distinction between day and night. However, he was sure that they had searched for at least half a year, and they still hadn't found the correct entrance. Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He brought Huang Xian to a mountain range and opened up a cave. He took out a large amount of divine fruits and gave them to her. He comforted her gently, "Don't be discouraged. We still have time. The survivors of the great wilderness need our help. Senior, don't worry. I'm confident that I can find the entrance. I have a deep impression of the entrance. It's a mountain range that looks like a bridge. The peaks of the two mountain peaks are covered in ice and snow, forming a sparkling and translucent bridge." Huang Xian ate a spirit fruit and replied very seriously. Yi Qinghan's eyes lit up. This kind of mountain peak was rare. With this crucial clue, it might be easier to find the entrance to the bitter desolate prison. I believe you can find it. Hurry up and eat. After eating, we'll continue our journey. Yi Qinghan nodded and said. In half a year, Yi Qinghan had explored more than half of the northernmost continent. However, he still couldn't find the mountain peak that Huang Xian mentioned. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't impatient. He was very interested in finding the entrance to the bitter desolate prison. Now that he had found another survivor of the great wilderness, he felt happy. Not to mention that there were so many survivors of the great wilderness locked up in the bitter desolate prison. After eating some spirit fruits, the two hurriedly continued their journey. Before, they had some meat, but now, even the meat had been eaten. Yi Qinghan didn't expect that they would stay here for so long. He didn't make enough preparations. Swish. 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 Yi Qinghan took Huang Xian and flew up again. They were flying less than 20 meters above the ground. It was more dangerous to go any higher, especially in the depths of the northernmost continent. The cold air was enough to freeze a paramount god. The cold air was like a blade that could cut open a paramount god's defense. Chapter 1370. The cold wind wreaked havoc, sweeping up snowflakes. The two went against the wind, but in the end, they could only continue on foot. The snow stuck to their black hair, turning it white in an instant. Huang Xian's mouth was dry, and she had lost her elegant demeanor. Her lips were cracked, but she persevered. For the sake of her original dream, for the sake of saving the desolate remnant race, she did not even complain about her tiredness. Yi Qinghan pulled Huang Xian, his legs as heavy as lead. They had been walking like this for more than a year, and sometimes he even had to carry her on his back. No matter how strong his body was, he would not be able to endure such a barren northern region. Snowy mountains stood in great numbers. Nature was mystical, and also the most beautiful. Many sparkling and translucent mountain peaks were like the scenery in fairy tales. It was beautiful, but full of danger. In the far north, countless mountains stood tall, and the peaks formed many ice bridges. Under the reflection of the sunlight, they reflected 10-colored divine radiance. It was magnificent. Just at this time, Huang Xian suddenly stopped. She turned around and walked a few steps before turning back to look at the northern snowy mountain forest. Her eyes were filled with excitement. It should be that mountain range in front. Let's go in and take a look. Huang Xian recalled the time when she left. She looked back several times at the bitter desolate prison's entrance, and the scene was almost exactly the same as now. Yi Qinghan clenched his fist and swallowed another divine pill. He gave Huang Xian another pill, and quickly pulled her towards the north. The mountain peak that was right in front of them was actually several hundred li away. The two of them ran for more than 2 hours before they officially entered the mountain range. After entering the mountain range, Huang Xian became more and more excited. She was almost certain that she had been here before. She raised her head to look at the mountain peak, trying to find that ice bridge. She kept turning back, imitating the scene of the past, hoping to recall her memories. The beautiful Huang Xian blossomed into a smile, looking even more beautiful. Yi Qinghan was also looking at the mountain peak, hoping to find that mountain peak. The cold air here was too heavy, and if his soul touched the ice above, he would be easily burned. Therefore, he did not dare to recklessly release his soul. After all, he was not a true realm lord yet. Woo-woo. The violent wind crashed against the mountain, forming a rumbling echo. It was deep and heavy, but also somewhat ear-piercing. When it blew on the face, it was like being slapped. In order to protect Huang Xian, Yi Qinghan had no choice but to release some energy to protect her. As for himself, he relied on the feather spirit robe to defend himself. After searching for a few more days in this vast mountain range, they finally found the bridge. It pierced through the universe and stood in the horizon. It was sparkling and translucent, like a gate with the dome of the sky as its top and the mountain as its frame. It was magnificent and grand. Senior, this is the place. Last time I was brought out from here, but I don't know how to enter the bitter desolate prison. Huang Xian excitedly said. Yi Qinghan nodded and took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and released a bit of his soul to search for the entrance to the bitter desolate prison. His movements were extremely careful because the surrounding mountain peak was too cold. Even his sector lord's soul couldn't touch it. After all, his body was too weak and couldn't withstand too much. It was like an adult possessing a child's body. No matter how strong the soul was, it wouldn't be able to do much. There was an obvious difference between the fluctuations coming from the entrance of the alternate dimension and the fluctuations coming from outside. Yi Qinghan was carefully searching for the different fluctuations. The nearby mountains were very large. After searching for more than 2 hours, he finally found the difference. Boom! Yi Qinghan punched through the alternate dimension, and another dimension appeared in his line of sight. The bitter desolate prison was right in front of him. Shua! Yi Qinghan brought Huang Xian and entered the bitter desolate prison in a flash. The bitter desolate prison's periphery was barren. At the exit, there was a sky-piercing energy barrier that blocked the exit. This barrier was personally set up by the sector lord. If one wanted to enter and exit freely, they would need a special method. However, Yi Qinghan pressed his hand on the energy barrier, and his soul fused with the energy barrier. He brought Huang Xian and quickly entered the real bitter desolate prison. As soon as they entered the bitter desolate prison, they understood what the bitter desolate prison was. This place was not suitable for living at all. There were no large ferocious birds. The spirit qi was thin, and there were no spirit herbs or spirit medicines. At most, it was suitable for mortals to survive. They only needed food. Here, it was already not bad to grow an emperor-level plant, let alone a divine-level plant. Those imprisoned here were either war criminals from the other 6 realms, survivors of the Great Desolate Prison, or unforgivable criminals from the Snow Nation divine world. Their cultivation was definitely the highest. Moreover, they had special identities and were not easy to kill. That was why they were imprisoned here. Emperor-level spirit medicines were useless to them. The bitter desolate prison was very large. It was like a small world, almost comparable to an endless star system. However, it was not made up of countless stars. Instead, it was a vast plain. There were mountains and water, but there was no spirit chi. This was the most fatal aspect. Many experts lived in the periphery. The environment here was slightly better than the depths. The racial discrimination here was the most severe. The periphery was the world of the war criminals. The survivors of the Great Desolate Prison were forbidden from entering. They could only suffer in the depths. There were at least some emperor-level spirit medicines and spirit herbs in the periphery. However, there was nothing in the depths. They could only rely on ordinary food to survive. Day after day, year after year, the advantages of the survivors of the Great Desolate Prison disappeared. After the experts transformed, only the weak remained. Moreover, they would become weaker and weaker. Yi Qinghan led Huang Xian on foot. They passed by quite a few villages, most of which were naturally formed because there were still some natives here. They were all mortals. However, ever since the war criminals had been imprisoned here, they had become the slaves of the war criminals. Even the women had become war criminals. As a result, the number of villages had dwindled. Many of the villages had been abandoned, and the mortals were slowly becoming extinct. Some of the mortals had even given up their superior lives in the outer regions to seek refuge with the remnant races of the great wilderness. Huang Xian was quite beautiful, and when she and Yi Qinghan passed by some of the villages, they attracted the attention of the war criminals. However, they didn't know who Yi Qinghan was, so they didn't act rashly. But as time passed, the savagery in their hearts began to erupt, and they wanted to take Huang Xian away. One village of war criminals from the Great Desolate Prison sent out a dozen or so experts to block Yi Qinghan. One of them was a paramount god, while the rest were giant gods. If you want to live, boy, leave the women behind, and leave the resources behind, the leader of the paramount god said coldly. Yi Qinghan stared at this group of people, the corners of his mouth curling up in a cold smile. His figure flickered, and he grabbed the over-god by the neck and quickly pulled him back to his original position. It was as if the over-god had voluntarily run into his hands. The experts from the Great Desolate Prison were stunned, especially the giant gods. Their legs trembled as they stared in horror at Yi Qinghan. The paramount god stared in shock at Yi Qinghan, not daring to move. He felt as if he moved, Yi Qinghan could snap his neck and end his life. Tell me where the survivors of the Great Desolate Prison are, Yi Qinghan said coldly. Chapter 1371. The paramount god was frightened by Yi Qinghan's cold gaze. His blood and qi were not flowing freely, and he was like a mortal powerless to break free from those iron hands. Speak. Yi Qinghan said coldly. In the depths of the desert, keep going west until you reach a fork in the road. There is a group of lowly people living in the most barren land. Your Excellency, please show mercy. The paramount god begged in despair. Crack. Yi Qinghan's hand exerted force, and he snapped the paramount god's neck. His life force was destroyed by a surge of divine power, and the divine power in his body was forcibly taken away to strengthen his own divine power. Boom! Yi Qinghan's claw opened up into a palm, and he slammed it into the paramount god's body. His body was pulverized, and blood splattered everywhere. Swish! 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 Yi Qinghan was merciless. A row of blades appeared around the bracelet on his wrist, and he directly cut off the necks of the other 10 or so people. The corpses fell to the ground, and blood flowed freely, seeping into the barren land. Huang Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. She did not expect that this seemingly gentle and kind young man would be so merciless when it came to killing people. Follow me. Yi Qinghan's voice was cold. Looking at the barren land, he was furious. He could not imagine how the people of the wasteland had managed to survive here. Even these war criminals and criminals thought that they were lowly people. One could only imagine how difficult it was for them to survive. Huang Xian silently looked at Yi Qinghan, then quickly rushed west. After about an hour, they reached a fork in the road. The world to the east was the most barren. It was the Gobi Desert, which prevented the war criminals from invading the territory of the survivors of the wasteland. It was also the Gobi Desert that gave the survivors of the wasteland a chance to breathe. Otherwise, they would have been killed and enslaved by the war criminals. The Gobi Desert stretched on for tens of thousands of miles. Inside, poisonous snakes ran amok. The creatures were more ferocious and full of vigor. The road was filled with eerie white bones, most of which were human skeletons. Looking at the posture of the skeletons, they should be survivors of the great wilderness who wanted to leave the depths but died in the Gobi Desert. Yi Qinghan stepped on the skeletons as he advanced. It was impossible to calculate how many people had died here. These were all heroes who wanted to fight for resources for the survivors of the great wilderness. They risked their lives to fight for the spirit herbs in the outer regions. Unfortunately, many of them failed and died in the wilderness. Whoosh! Wherever Yi Qinghan walked, a burst of sand and gravel was raised, burying all the bones in the depths. The venomous snakes and vicious monsters on the ground were all crushed by the power of the world and buried together with these bones. It could be considered as revenge for these heroes. The more he walked, the colder his heart became. The more he walked, the angrier he became. This was because there were simply too many skeletons. Some of the skeletons had even been killed by knives and swords. However, the direction in which they had sped off was towards the depths of the city. This meant that they had obtained the resources but had been chased by the war criminals on the periphery and had died tragically on the spot. Gotcha! Yi Qinghan crushed some of the skeletons because there were too many of them. There was no place for him to step on. Huang Xian was careful not to step on any of the skeletons because she knew that these skeletons were the elites and heroes of the tribe. Boom! 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 A giant praying mantis appeared from the depths. It was only at the level of a god, but for the survivors of the great wilderness, it was already very powerful. It brandished its sharp claws and charged towards Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's brows moved. He waved his hand and turned it into a sharp blade. Even berserk didn't need to be used. The blade of his hand actually tore apart the praying mantis, causing a drop of blood to spill out. The praying mantis struggled for a while before dying completely. Huang Xian couldn't imagine how powerful Yi Qinghan was. She had already begun to worship him like a god. The two quickened their pace. Along the way, sand and dust rose in all directions and buried everything. After passing through the neighboring villages, they saw thousands of small villages where people lived together. The men plowed the fields while the women weaved. They lived the lives of mortals. However, the children were still cultivating and their cultivation levels were extremely low. Exert strength at the waist. Punch out. Everyone, use your strength. What do you think you look like when you're so soft? Where's the vigor of the people of the great wilderness? The middle-aged man standing at the very front shouted angrily. The hundreds of children's steps were steady and their punches were rather powerful. However, he was still not satisfied and hoped that their punches would be accompanied by a gale. Ha! Ha! Kick! Yi Qinghan looked at the group of children cultivating. He didn't expect that there would be so many survivors of the great wilderness. There were at least 20,000 people. Children, young men, young women, old people, women, and children from different villages gathered at the center. The surrounding areas were stacked with wooden stakes to prevent attacks from vicious beasts and even more to prevent war criminals from robbing the women. There were some doddering old people who were almost about to transform into the Tao. However, they had given up on cultivating and were quietly enjoying their final moments of happiness. They had placed their hopes on the children. A year before they transformed into the Tao, they would transfer their lifetime's cultivation to the next generation's strongest. It would be passed down generation after generation to ensure that the tribe was protected by experts. Their desire for the inheritance of the great wilderness far exceeded their desire for life. Yi Qin Han was gratified but also sorrowful. The once powerful people of the great wilderness were now reduced to mortals. They could only protect themselves and couldn't even protect the women of their tribe. Huang Xian cried tears of joy. She rushed to the large plaza at the center of the village and attracted everyone's attention. Huang Xian had left not long ago and was the only woman who had returned from this place. The old man's face was filled with joy. He stood up to welcome her. The adults and children hugged Huang Xian and wept bitterly. Huang Xian wiped away her tears and looked back at Yi Qin Han who was descending. She excitedly said, "I've brought a senior to save you. He said that he will take us away from here and return to the great wilderness domain." The survivors of the great wilderness looked at Yi Qin Han who had suddenly appeared. At first, they were vigilant, but soon they were filled with joy and excitement. The eyes of the giant god powerhouses who were about to reach their end were filled with shock and ecstasy. The aura of the great wilderness. The aura of the Father God. Are you, the great Father God? The several white-haired giant gods trembled. They were about to die at any moment. At this moment, their faces were flushed red, as if they were experiencing terminal lucidity. The survivors of the great wilderness were especially sensitive to the aura of their Father God. Yi Qin Han might be able to deceive others, but he couldn't deceive the survivors of the great wilderness. Yi Qin Han looked at the four giant gods, his eyes filled with love and gratification. The people of the great wilderness were indeed fearless. Each generation would protect the next. Even if they died, they would die standing. "Thank you for your hard work," Yi Qin Han said in a deep voice. "Greetings to the great Father God. I never thought that I would be able to see you again in this life." The giant gods wanted to kneel, but Yi Qin Han reached out to support them. "I have let down the people of the great wilderness and made you suffer. But from now on, you will never be humiliated in the slightest." Yi Qin Han's eyes were filled with tears as he firmly said. Huang Xian turned to look at Yi Qin Han in shock. Her cultivation was relatively low, so she could only feel the generosity and benevolence of a father from Yi Qin Han. However, she never imagined that he was the legendary Father God. "Huang Xian, you have done very well. You have endured humiliation all these years and even gave birth to the great wilderness spirit body. Once we leave this bitter desolate prison, I will reward you." Yi Qin Han nodded and said, "Father God." Huang Xian knelt on the ground, sobbing. She couldn't describe the excitement in her heart. Yi Qin Han fiercely nodded. He waved his hand and helped Huang Xian up. He gently said, "Everyone, don't be too excited. I will temporarily restore the vitality of the four of you. You have made great contributions to the great wilderness inheritance, so you should enjoy it." Immediately, Yi Qin Han took out some life elixirs that could extend their lifespans by at least 4 tens of thousands of years. 10,000 years was enough for Yi Qin Han to turn them into supreme gods. "As for yesterday's mistakes, I apologize once again. I feel too guilty. If you can't see the 2 chapters that I missed, you can just remove the bookshelf and add them to your collection." Chapter 1372. The survivors of the great wilderness surrounded Yi Qin Han and chattered excitedly, especially the children. Their faces were full of worship and reverence, hoping to learn from the legendary God Father. The middle-aged man who taught the children looked at Yi Qin Han expectantly. Yi Qin Han looked at them and smiled. It was as if even the heavens were moved by his smile. It was as if the world would be peaceful as long as he smiled. He watched the elders consume the divine medicine and personally transferred some of the desolation god energy. This was the bitter desolate prison, so no one would care about the fluctuations of the desolation god energy. These old-timers had built up a lot of experience, and were on the verge of reaching the paramount god level. They just lacked a bit of good fortune. Truth be told, all of the savage wild survivors had built up a lot of experience, considering that they didn't have any resources. And yet, they had reached this level of cultivation. If they had access to plenty of wild's god medicines, it wouldn't be a problem for them to break through 2 or 3 levels within 2 or 3 years. Are there any survivors of the great wilderness in the depths? Yi Qinghan asked expectantly. He naturally hoped that there were more survivors. Unfortunately, the elders all shook their heads. There were only so many people left in the bitter desolate prison. Back then, the first-generation experts of the Great Desolate Prison had already transformed into the Tao and passed down their divine power to the next generation, hoping to maintain the legacy. After so long, their cultivation base had become weaker and weaker, and their legacies had become weaker and weaker. Yi Qinghan sighed and sent everyone into the Incher's pot, giving them a large amount of desolation god energy for them to cultivate. The Incher's pot was divided into 3 areas, one for Divine Sect, one for Heavenly Hall, and one for the survivors of the Great Wilderness. As soon as the survivors of the Great Wilderness appeared in the Incher's pot, they were immediately recognized by the top experts of Divine Sect. They are the Great Wilderness lowlifes. Why are they here? The Divine Lord roared. The elders and supreme elders of Divine Sect, as well as the experts of Heavenly Hall who were about to reach Tao assimilation, were shocked and murderous. They wanted to destroy the survivors of the Great Wilderness, but they were stopped by a world force and couldn't get close. This Sua Feng has the soul of a realm lord. Could he be a survivor of the Great Wilderness domain? The Divine Lord was very smart and quickly connected the dots. However, he didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be the Great Wilderness warlord of Yi Qinghan, the father of desolation. Think of a way to leave this place and inform the Great Realm Lord. We can't let Sua Feng succeed. A grand elder of Divine Sect said in a deep voice. At this moment, a faint figure appeared above the Incher's pot and gradually solidified. It was Yi Qinghan. He looked down at the people from the Divine Sect and heaven with disdain. Li Feng, as the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. I'll give you a chance to live, and I'll also give you a chance to inherit Heavenly Hall. Kill everyone in Divine Sect, and you'll become my subordinate. If you can't do it, you'll be destroyed along with Divine Sect. Yi Qinghan said coldly before disappearing into the Yin clan's pot. After returning to the bitter desolate prison, Yi Qinghan left the depths alone and headed straight for the outer perimeter. After crossing the Gobi Desert, Yi Qinghan took out his berserk hammer and began a bloody massacre of the war criminals in the outer perimeter. Blood flowed like rivers along the way. If it weren't for these war criminals, the survivors of the Great Wilderness wouldn't have lived so miserably, and wouldn't have been left with so little inheritance. It didn't matter if they were strong or weak, middle-aged or women, they were all killed. It was like a demon god that only knew how to kill. Tens of thousands of villages in the outer perimeter were massacred along the way. The bitter desolate prison became hell. In just 3 days, Yi Qinghan killed everyone inside. Then, after recovering to his peak state, Yi Qinghan left the bitter desolate prison alone. After entering the far north region, Yi Qinghan began to move with ease. After a few days, he left the bitterly cold far north region, that at this moment, the left marshal's residence had taken complete control of the Snow Empire's divine realm with the cooperation of Xue Jiuhuang. The military power was concentrated, and the important positions were all under the left marshal's residence's control. The only change was the military saint, Zhu Wuxin. Even the 4th prince was captured. Gu Qingyu didn't hold back and killed him directly. Nangong Lan was also captured and imprisoned in the imperial prison, waiting for Yi Qinghan's punishment. The 9th prince was content to be a puppet emperor. At least the left marshal's residence didn't stop him at all, as long as he didn't touch the people of the left marshal's residence. As for Xue Jiuhuang, she was the mother of the world and was happy to be at ease. She didn't want to fight for power with the left marshal's residence. Yu Fei didn't dare to cross the line. If she angered the left marshal's residence, not to mention her, even the 18th prince couldn't be protected. Yu Fei wanted to marry Xue Wuhan's sister, Xue Wu, to the left marshal's residence several times to stabilize her power and at least maintain her current position. However, the people of the eccentric sect didn't want to marry an outsider at all. Yi Qinghan disappeared for 3 years, but the divine bird knew that he was still alive. The people of the eccentric sect were relieved. In the spring of 3 years later, Yi Qinghan appeared outside the holy city. He was dressed in a green robe that fluttered in the wind. He had an outstanding temperament and attracted everyone's attention as soon as he appeared. The Left Marshal is back. Welcome, Lord Left Marshal. The people of the holy city had already regarded Yi Qinghan as a saint. Since his appearance, he had protected the orthodoxy, destroyed the divine sect, slaughtered the heavens, conquered the hell, wiped out the Yantian pavilion, and made the Wang family submit to him. Who else could do this? The former emperor couldn't do it, and neither could the 9th emperor. But he did it. Yi Qinghan was the role model of the younger generation of the divine realm of the Snow Country. He was in existence revered by tens of thousands of people, but they didn't know that he was a demon from hell to the divine realm of the Snow Country. He could devour the entire divine realm of the Snow Country at any time. Yi Qinghan stepped into the holy city with a calm smile on his face. The people of the holy city were in awe and worship him even more. The divine bird had already sensed his return and rushed out. It looked at Yi Qinghan with a smile and snorted, "You didn't even bring me along when you went out to play. I went out to do business. Bringing you along would have affected me." Yi Qinghan smiled. "Bullshit. When have I ever dragged you down? When have I ever not helped you? You burning the bridge after crossing the river. Cough cough, pretend I didn't say anything." The divine bird wanted to complain again, but Yi Qinghan's expression had already turned cold. It immediately changed its tone. Yi Qinghan sneered and brought the divine bird back to the left marshal residence. He gathered everyone and said in a low voice, "Prepare for the war of the 7 realms. We'll withdraw from the Snow Country one by one and let them kill each other. Have you found the bitter desolate prison?" Gu Qingyu asked with a smile. Yi Qinghan raised his head proudly and said, "That's right. When this marshal takes action, it'll be a success." "Good. Let's prepare to stir up chaos in the 6 realms. It's best if they both suffer great losses. Let the realm lords of the 7 realms come out and kill each other." Everyone was excited. They had been waiting for this day for too long. Yi Qinghan smiled and said to Gu Qingyu and the others, "You guys get ready. I'll send all the survivors of the Great Desolate Domain back to the Great Desolate Domain. Let's go all out." With that, Yi Qinghan left the holy city and disappeared again. Chapter 1373. The Great Wasteland Domain was filled with an aura of desolation. Auspicious clouds surged as if there was more life. Countless desolate beasts with spirituality were running wildly, flying through the sky and burrowing through the earth to plunder resources. Yi Qinghan appeared in the Great Wasteland Domain and summoned the heaven-taming beast. He turned into a bolt of lightning and charged into the depths. The Great Wasteland Domain was boundless. It would take a paramount god thousands of years to traverse it, and this was not including the danger zones. However, the heaven-taming beast was a speed-type desolate beast. It was much faster than Yi Qinghan. After years of bitter cultivation, its cultivation had reached a new level. It was close to adulthood. Once it matured, it would become an existence second only to the Realm Lord. Screech. A long screech pierced through the clouds. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan was millions of miles away. Looking down at the mountains and earth from above, Yi Qinghan was excited. The future belonged to the Great Wasteland. The Great Wasteland would definitely rise. Several months later, Yi Qinghan arrived at the desolate plain and sent all the survivors of the Great Wasteland into the Great Wasteland Steel. Yi Qinghan, who controlled the desolate god avatar, was focused on cultivation and did not care about the outside world. Now that his comprehension had deepened, he sat cross-legged in front of the Great Wasteland Steel and comprehended the Great Wasteland Tao scripture. His main body did not open his eyes. At this moment, the Great Wasteland Steel became restless. Yi Kun was crazily attacking the Great Wasteland Steel. "Let me out. I want to go out." Yi Kun roared. He was beaten up by Emperor Yi every 2 to 3 days. He did not want to stay in the Great Wasteland Steel for even a day. Yi Qinghan's cold eyes flashed as he stepped into the interior of the Great Wasteland's monument. When he saw Yi Kun's restless appearance, his anger grew. The biggest failure of his life was having a younger brother like this. Unfortunately, they were blood brothers. Yi Kun was startled by Yi Qinghan's sudden appearance. However, he quickly covered it up and said seriously, "Brother, I want to go out and fight with you. How can I improve by cultivating here all day? I have reached a bottleneck. I need to fight to the death to break through." Yi Qinghan squinted his eyes as he looked at Yi Kun. Yi Qinghan's talent was truly frightening. To think that he was trying to break through to the utmost pinnacle state. How long had it been? He was even stronger than Jiang Jingtian, who was fighting outside the wild sect. Yi Qinghan's stare made Yi Kun's hair stand on end. He didn't dare to act rashly and could only look at Yi Qinghan with an innocent and hopeful gaze. He knew that his gaze would remind his brother of their brotherhood when they were young. "All right, I'll bring you out when I get out this time," Yi Qinghan said straightforwardly. Yi Kun did not expect Yi Qinghan to agree. He was overjoyed. Yi Qinghan no longer looked at Yi Kun. He walked into the inner space of the Great Wasteland's monolith alone and chose the best space beside a lake. The lake was filled with the seed lotuses of the 9 heavens god lotus. The special seed that the 9 heavens god lotus gave to the divine bird had sprouted. It was very weak and swayed in the middle of the lake. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan summoned the remnant races of the Great Wastelands with a thought. More than 20,000 people looked around and saw the Great Wasteland's herbs everywhere. They were extremely excited. Emperor Yi walked over. He was also very happy to see Yi Qinghan find so many remnant races of the Great Wastelands. This was because he could feel the joy and excitement in Yi Qinghan's heart. "My son, pass down the order. Seize the time to cultivate and break through the bottleneck. Even at the cost of death, they must break through as soon as possible. This is because I want to create chaos in the 7 realms. After that, the realm lord of the 7 realms will appear. We need to be strong enough to protect ourselves." Yi Qinghan looked at the young and tender face of Emperor Yi and was filled with pity. In order to take revenge and survive, he had done too many things to let Emperor Yi down. He had also done too many things that went against his bottom line. Emperor Yi and Yi Qinghan's souls were connected. At such a close distance, they could definitely sense each other. However, Emperor Yi did not blame Yi Qinghan. He only gave Yi Qinghan a fierce hug and said gently, "Master, don't think too much. As long as your heart is mine, it's enough. Right now, we are just trying to survive. Is there anything that we can't do? Is there anything that has to be a bottom line?" Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and hugged the thin and weak Emperor Yi. He wished that he could squeeze her into his body. She always made him feel at ease. She would not quarrel or be jealous. She would not cause trouble for no reason. With a wife like this, what was there to be dissatisfied with? Emperor Yi had grown a lot in these years. He had also matured a lot. Yi Qinghan pulled Emperor Yi away. With the resources, the remnant races of the great wilderness began to cultivate bitterly. They all hoped that they could follow the father of the great wilderness into battle again and take back the territory that belonged to them. There were still many elites in the Great Wastelands Monument. Yi Qinghan was the shaman emperor. He was the sixth-generation shaman god of the shaman race and the youngest son of Yi Qinghan. He was the child who combined all the strengths of the shaman race and the shaman race. In just a few hundred years, he had actually reached a realm that others could not reach in their entire lifetime. He was a low-level supreme god, but his combat strength was definitely at the peak of the emperor realm. Born with the appearance of an emperor, Yi Qinghan had inherited Yi Qinghan's temperament and aura. His every word and action revealed the might of an emperor. Facing him, Yi Qinghan did not dare to act rashly. Qian Poxi was the strongest existence among the remnant races of the Great Wilderness. Of course, other than Huang Peng was already breaking through to the realm of the Realm Lord. He was a true peak existence and was the most terrifying existence before the Great Desolate War. Apart from the realm of the Realm Lord, he, the dragon's resentment, and the others were definitely invincible. Qian Poxi was also breaking through to the high-level supreme god. She often fought with Yi Qinghan and was defeated time and time again. Her body was covered in wounds and she was almost killed a few times. However, she profited from her misfortune and became a peak existence in the world. Wu Jiang had been immersed in cultivation recently. After suffering such unbearable humiliation in the shaman race, if Yi Qinghan did not let bygones be bygones, how could he have a chance? Therefore, he did not want to disappoint Yi Qinghan. His efforts and effort far exceeded Qian Poxi's. He had almost sacrificed his life to exhaust his life source. At such a young age, he seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. His realm had already reached the peak of the supreme god realm, but his life source had almost been exhausted. It was almost impossible for him to improve further. Yi Qinghan looked at Wu Jiang's madness and sighed sadly. He came to his side. Wu Jiang looked up at Yi Qinghan and hurriedly stood up. He said in a low voice, "Uncle Yi, you're back." Wu Jiang always had a cold appearance in front of others. He was very strong. However, in front of Yi Qinghan, the weakest part of his heart was revealed. Wu Jiang, don't give yourself too much pressure. Exhausting your life source to cultivate is not a good thing. I believe in your talent. We have plenty of time. Don't destroy your own foundation for a moment of power. Yi Qinghan warned him sternly. Wu Jiang lowered his head. He was so nervous that his hands were clutching his clothes. He was sweating profusely. He did not look like a supreme god at all. Yi Qinghan sighed softly. He patted Wu Jiang's shoulder and said hoarsely, "Think about it carefully. Who hasn't been humiliated before? If you want to prove yourself, you don't have to use such an extreme method. It's not worth it. What you need now is to settle down. You might have a chance to reach the peak of the supreme god realm, but the chances are slim. I'll add more chapters in the afternoon. I look forward to reading on QQ, Genesis Chinese Network, and Qidian. Chapter 1374. Yi Qinghan's teachings made Wu Yan feel guilty. All these years, he had been bitterly cultivating in the great wasteland steel and was unwilling to talk to others. This caused his path of cultivation to become narrower and narrower. Although his cultivation base grew quickly, it also sealed his path forward. Uncle Yi Qinghan, I want to go out with you. Even if I die outside, I will have no regrets. Thank you for letting bygones be bygones and giving me a chance to be reborn. Wu Yan looked at Yi Qinghan in awe and said seriously. Yi Qinghan sighed and nodded. He then found Huang Peng and specially instructed him to prepare for the War of the Seven Realms. At that time, the Great Wasteland Domain and the Chaos Domain might be involved. They had to be prepared. Huang Peng's eyes were full of expectation and fighting spirit. He could finally avenge the hatred and enmity of those years. This was not a simple desire for survival, but a desire filled with anger and hatred. The blood and lives of countless creatures in the great wasteland domain would not flow in vain, and his brothers would not die in vain. After giving some instructions, Yi Qinghan looked at the survivors of the great wilderness and the mainstay of the wild sect who were cultivating diligently. He did not want to disturb them and was about to leave with Wu Jiang and Yi Kun. However, when he was leaving, Yi Qinghan's doppelganger outside the great wasteland's monument flashed and disappeared. He did not want Yi Kun to know about his doppelganger. Yi Qinghan returned to the Great Wasteland steel and sealed the Great Wasteland Godhead in Yi Kun's body so that he could not use the power of the Great Wasteland and the Great Wasteland's secret technique. Then, he said, "Wait for me on the other side of the island. I will find you later." Wu Yan did not have any questions and left the island first. Yi Kun frowned and asked unhappily, "Brother, why did Wu Yan not seal the Great Wasteland Godhead but I did?" "I'm your real brother. Because you are the most impulsive. When I need you to use the Great Wasteland Godhead, I will naturally help you," Yi Qinghan said coldly. Yi Kun had no choice but to leave unwillingly. The Great Desolation Godhead was sealed. Other than Yi Qinghan, even Huang Peng might not be able to unseal it. It was even more impossible for the other realm lords to do so. Although Yi Qinghan allowed Yi Kun to do as he pleased, it didn't mean that Yi Kun could continue to be so impudent. After Yi Kun left, the avatar of the great Baron Tao body appeared once again. Both of them were of the same mind and soul, so there was no need for more words. Yi Qinghan's main body had transferred most of his life essence, martial Tao insights, and cultivation to his avatar. This was because he had no intention of returning alive after leaving. Now, his avatar was his main body, and his main body had become an avatar. Soon after, Yi Qinghan chose to leave without looking back. His back was bleak and filled with determination. A hero who left would never return. This time, he was bound to turn the 7 realms upside down. The main body looked at the departing figure and clenched his fists. A cold smile appeared on his face as he hoarsely muttered to himself, "7 realms, our battle has just begun." Wu Jiang and Yi Qinghan were waiting on the other side when Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and appeared in front of them. Screech! The heaven-taming divine beast came from the void, stirring up thousands of waves as it descended in front of the 3. Its aura forced Yi Kun to retreat, his face pale. "Let's go." Yi Qinghan waved his hand and brought the 2 onto the back of the heaven-taming divine beast with a smile on his face. The heaven-taming divine beast spread its wings and sped away. A few days later, they passed by the Great Barren Palace. The Startwining Vine had almost covered 100,000 miles around the Great Barren Palace. It was lush and full of roots that devoured everything. As long as it was energy, it would devour it. Although this kind of thing was powerful, it was only suitable to live in a world like this because there were too many resources. The Startwining Vine sensed Yi Qinghan in the sky and waved one of its vines. As fast as lightning, it wrapped around the sharp claws of the heaven-taming divine beast. Immediately, thousands of vines danced and wrapped around the 3 people and the beast tightly. The heaven-taming divine beast was enraged. With a move of its sharp claws, it tore apart the vines and sped upwards, dodging the attacks of the Startwining Vine. Yi Qinghan gently leaped and appeared on top of a vine. He tapped the air with the tip of his foot and was as steady as Mount Tai. The vines quickly retracted and danced excitedly. The earth shook, but the Great Barren Palace remained motionless. Yi Qinghan smiled as he looked at the Startwining Vine. No wonder there weren't many of these vines and they would all starve to death. It was because they were too gluttonous. The Startwining Vine's original form was a tender green vine. Now, it had transformed into a little green man. Although it couldn't speak, it could still have human emotions and expressions. Yi Qinghan patted the Startwining Vine's original form and whispered, "Don't be too excited. I'll let you show off your skills in a few days." Hiss hiss hiss. The vine sent out soul waves as if it was communicating with Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan felt the soul waves and suddenly laughed. He mocked, "You actually missed the divine bird. I'll bring it to see you next time." Swish. 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 Suddenly, the start-whining vine split into several smaller vines. A few smaller vines could actually move on their own. They crawled on the ground like animals. Their roots were like centipede legs. There were a lot of them and they moved very quickly. "All right, I'll bring one of your clones to see it." Yi Qinghan shook his head. He didn't expect the start-whining vine to be so playful. Yi Qinghan leaped up and brought a small start-whining vine into the void. A huge vine soared into the sky and struck Yi Qinghan's heel. It borrowed the force to soar into the sky and landed on the back of the heaven-taming divine beast. "Let's go," Yi Qinghan ordered. The heaven-taming divine beast quickly brought them to the border of the Great Barren. It took almost 2 months for the heaven-taming divine beast to go back and forth. If it was in the primal chaos realm, the heaven-taming divine beast could go back and forth several times a day. One could imagine how big the Great Barren domain was. A few months later, Yi Qinghan brought the 3 of them and the star-twining vine into the Snow Country's divine world. However, as soon as they reached the territory of the city amongst the clouds, they heard many experts discussing the matter of the Snow Country's divine world being provoked by the ultimate martial world. The Snow Empire's divine world army, in order to spread the provocation of the border several hundred times and spread it to the rear. The people were in an uproar and they all advocated for war against the ultimate martial world. "Motherfucker, this is too much. The ultimate martial world actually dared to publicly insult the great realm lord. They insulted Marshal Zhua as a coward. This is simply a great humiliation. I hope Marshal Zhua will declare war and beat them until their heads bleed. Fight the ultimate martial world. I will donate 1,000 Earth-rank divine stones. I will donate the resources and wealth I obtained from 2 months of adventures. This is too infuriating. They actually dared to insult Marshal Zhua. He is my idol. I want to join the army and help Marshal Zhua attack the ultimate martial world." A large group of people were filled with righteous indignation. This was because Marshal Zhua came from the city amongst the clouds. He was the pride of the city amongst the clouds. How could they allow others to insult him? The left martial residence was naturally Realm Lord Yi Qinghan's position in the hearts of the younger generation. They made use of their worship mentality and hoped that they would fully support the Snow Empire's divine world to fight against the ultimate martial world. The promotion was successful. Everything was ready. They only lacked the east wind. As long as Yi Qinghan returned to the front lines, they would be able to mobilize the army to wage war against the ultimate martial world. Once again, I beg for your precious and free recommendation. Chapter 1375. The left general residence was creating momentum and propaganda to lay a good foundation for the war. They hoped that the entire Snow Empire would support them, including the royal family and the clan elders. So if they wanted to make a move, they had to let the ultimate martial realm do it first. The desolate border city was a city close to the border. It was only 300 li away from the ultimate martial realm's border. Northwest of the desolate border city, there was a forbidden land. No one knew where it led to, but treasures would appear from time to time. It was like a natural land of chaos, so it was named Heavenly Treasure Forbidden Land. The Heavenly Treasure Forbidden Land was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. People would often search for treasures in the periphery. If they were lucky, they could get a giant divine weapon. If they were unlucky, they could get lost and die inside. The people of the left general residence and Zhu Wuxin were discussing in the desolate border city how to make the ultimate martial realm's army invade Snow Empire's divine realm. It was obviously not easy to make it flawless and give the ultimate martial realm the motivation to invade. Once they succeeded, it would be tantamount to an invasion. Zhu Wuxin seemed to want to start a war with the ultimate martial realm. The military saint didn't arrange troops and didn't personally fight. He just talked on paper. His title of military saint couldn't be recognized by the Almighty. After half a day of discussion, they still couldn't come up with a feasible plan. After all, the ultimate martial realm felt that something was wrong with the Snow Empire's divine realm, so they took the initiative to restrain the realm army. Occasionally, they would start a war of words. The divine bird lazily stretched out its 2 legs and spread its wings. It looked at everyone with disdain. Discussing such a small problem for half a day. Are you all idiots? The divine bird sneered. At this moment, Gu Qingyu and the others looked at the divine bird speechlessly. If it wasn't Yi Qinghan's spirit pet, it would have been slapped away by Zhu Wuxin. Everyone was very dissatisfied. They were seriously discussing, but this thing was causing trouble. Zhu Wuxin was even more dissatisfied. He angrily asked, "You are smart. What good idea do you have to make the ultimate martial realm take the initiative to attack? Lure the enemy in. When the enemy advances, I retreat. Their invasion will be considered a success." The divine bird stood up and said proudly. "How to lure the enemy?" Zhu Wuxin speechlessly asked. "Idiot, of course it's an extreme pseudo-world weapon. The thunder god's lightning hammer, the stone brick, and the world-piercing spear would definitely not work, but *********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** the divine sword in the Lord's hand has never appeared before. Throw it to the periphery of the danger zone and treat it as the birth of a treasure. We can send people to snatch it, but if the extreme Tao pseudo-world artifact does not acknowledge us, the people of the extreme martial realm will definitely be tempted. This is a pseudo-world artifact, something that is rarely seen in 10,000 years. They will definitely take the risk. Kakik, this divine bird is an intelligent being. How can a mere human like you imagine? The divine bird snickered. Zhu Wuxin, Gu Qingyu and the others were speechless. After a long time, Gu Qingyu had to admit that the divine bird's method was very feasible. He awkwardly coughed twice and agreed, ahem, what the divine bird said seems to make sense. Zhu Wuxin was dispirited and said dejectedly, all right, it is indeed feasible. If a pseudo-world artifact appears at the border of the extreme martial realm, even if it is a trap, I'm afraid we will do everything to snatch it. The divine bird raised its head arrogantly and walked valiantly on the table like a general. It said smugly, of course, don't you know who came up with the idea? Everyone did not care about the divine bird's smugness. Gu Qingyu left the border city in the middle of the night and went straight to the heavenly treasure danger zone. He came to a mountain peak that was extremely close to the inner area and stabbed the divine sword into the mountain peak before leaving the danger zone. After leaving the danger zone, Yi Qinghan formed seals with his palms and activated the pseudo-world artifact divine sword to hang in the air. Divine light blossomed and illuminated the heaven and earth. The pseudo-world artifact's divine light rippled for billions of li. Even the extreme martial realm on the other side of the world river could feel the terrifying world power ripple. Hua! In a split second, the entire border became lively. Within a radius of 100,000 li, one could clearly see the appearance of an extreme treasure in the heavenly treasure danger zone. With such a huge energy ripple, it was obviously an extreme pseudo-world artifact. Gu Qingyu hid in the distance and activated the divine sword. The divine sword floated in the air and a sword hum pierced through time and space, resounding through the ages. Xiu xiu xiu. In a few short breaths, at least a few hundred figures rushed into the depths of the danger zone to snatch the divine sword. However, the moment they touched the divine sword, they were sent flying. Pang! Boom boom boom. The divine sword was extremely powerful. Back then, even Yi Qinghan was almost sent flying, let alone these adventurers and treasure hunters. The strongest was only at the extreme early stage. One after another, they were sent flying. However, they did not give up. This was a pseudo-world artifact. Obtaining the pseudo-world artifact was equivalent to becoming a territory of the divine nation. The resources would be enough to nurture a huge family that could be passed down for billions of years. Just like the person who auctioned the world-piercing spear, Yi Qinghan had promised that as long as the left martial residence did not fall, his family would not be exterminated. What kind of temptation was this? The Snow Border Army's morale was in chaos. First, the commander rushed over to snatch the divine sword. Then, the 10-men commanders, 1,000-men commanders and even 100-men commanders gave up on the army and rushed towards the heavenly treasure danger zone. Then, the Snow Border Army that was guarding the border was in chaos. With the border in chaos, the people of the ultimate martial world naturally did not suspect that this was a trap. The Snow Country's divine world would not use the border as a lure. This was fatal. Once the ultimate martial world used the entrance to occupy a city of the Snow Country's divine world, with a city as a foundation, it was enough to beat the Snow Country's divine world until they could not recover. The first to move was the commander of the ultimate martial world's army. They contacted experts to come and fight for the pseudo-world artifact. One by one, a large number of ultimate martial world's experts knew that a pseudo-world artifact had appeared in the heavenly treasure danger zone. They all rushed towards the Snow Country's divine world. A pseudo-world artifact was in chaos. More and more people participated in the fight. They even started killing each other before they even touched the treasure. The commander of the Snow Border Army, who was the first to reach the pseudo-world artifact, was also sent flying by the extreme pseudo-world artifact. He could not obtain the recognition of the pseudo-world artifact at all. He was beaten by the power of the world until his chi and blood were in turmoil. Even his divine armor was shattered. However, he was still unwilling to give up. However, the first person he contacted was not someone else, but the experts of the left martial residence. Even if he could not obtain the pseudo-world artifact, he could still give the left martial residence a favor. The left martial residence pretended to send over a dozen super experts. Shi Gu, Mo Li, Li Feng, everyone was here except for Gu Qinyu. They rushed up one by one, but in the end, they were not recognized and were sent flying by the power of the world. The powerful divine weapon stood proudly in the sky. The surrounding divine radiance tore apart time and space. Lightning struck and illuminated the heaven and earth. Yi Qinghan looked at the border from afar. He thought that a pseudo-world artifact had really appeared. Just as he arrived at the outskirts of the desolate border city, he saw the divine radiance above the heavenly treasure danger zone and the energy ripples emitted by the divine sword. Only then did he know that it was the sword in Gu Qinyu's hand. Then, the cultivators of the ultimate martial realm rushed over. The army occupied the border and forced their way into the desolate city. Chapter 1376. Looking at the army of the ultimate martial world marching straight in under the command of the commander and the Snow Border Army not having any intention to resist, they were rushing towards the heavenly treasure danger grounds like a swarm of bees. He smiled faintly. It was obvious that the Snow Border Army was going to suffer losses. However, he didn't care as they were not people of the great wilderness. But fortunately, Snow Ninth Emperor wasn't in charge of this place, otherwise, he would never allow them to enter Snow Country in Divine World. When the army of the ultimate martial realm was not far from the desolate city, the Snow Realm army was already too late to stop them, and they didn't even have the chance to organize the army to counterattack. They were slaughtered. After a few hours of fighting, the people of the crazy sect also participated in the battle, but they soon chose to withdraw and defend the desolate city, giving up on the Snow Realm army. The Snow Realm army was slaughtered, blood flowed like a river, a total of 30,000 people, not a single one escaped. The commander of the army of the ultimate martial realm was an extreme expert, leading 100,000 troops. They divided into two groups, very orderly. One group rushed to the desolate city, the other group surrounded the entrance of the heavenly treasure extreme ground, forcibly expelling the experts of Snow Country and Divine World. Those who didn't follow were killed by arrows. Soon, the experts of Snow Country and Divine World had to withdraw from the battle, but they didn't leave. They were all waiting for the Snow Realm army to counterattack, so that they could take back the heavenly treasure extreme ground. However, the army of the ultimate martial realm was continuously pouring into the desolate city, and the reinforcements were rapidly increasing. In order to obtain this divine sword, the ultimate martial realm could be considered to be going all out. The army of the ultimate martial realm that didn't communicate with each other was quickly sending reinforcements. Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes and looked at the army of the ultimate martial realm in the distance. He didn't interfere, nor did he want to catch them all in one fell swoop. Instead, he wanted to lure the enemy in, so that they could confirm the invasion of the ultimate martial realm. When the time comes, they would passively counterattack. The royal family of Snow Country and Divine World would only support a battle to the death, they would never compromise. Aren't we going to support them? Wu Yan, who was standing at the side, asked curiously. No, since they chose to lure the enemy in, they will definitely choose to withdraw from the desolate city when they can't hold on, and give the desolate city to them. Yi Qinghan shook his head. He had guessed their plan, but he did not know that it had been planned by the Divine Bird. As the master of the Divine Bird, he had underestimated the Divine Bird and did not understand how treacherous it could be. Sure enough, the city walls were about to collapse, and countless civilians were killed or injured. Desolate City was in imminent danger. One after another, messages for help were sent to the rear, hoping for reinforcements. However, it would take time for the army to move out. In just one night, the Left General's residence and Zhu Wuxin led a group of elite warriors and quickly retreated from Desolate City, leaving behind a ground full of corpses and rivers of blood. The destruction of the desolate border city and the death of the Left Commander Manor's great general Xian Yain had caused a huge wave in the entire Snow Empire's divine realm. This was an undisguised invasion. The royal family was furious, and the common people were stirred up. This aroused their determination to resist the war. In fact, Xian Yain did not die. This was just the first step of Yi Qinghan's plan to withdraw the insane sex people step by step. In the following battles, the Left General's residence would die, a great general, but they would also make a great contribution, allowing the Left General's residence to leave a glory for the world, even surpassing the Realm Lord. On the surface, Xian Yain had died in battle, but in reality, he had secretly left the Snow Empire's divine realm and returned to the Great Wasteland domain. Yi Qinghan brought Yi Kun and Wu Yan to meet up with the insane sex people. Xue Zhehuang also brought the army to help, wanting to attack Desolate City and drive the ultimate martial realm's army out. However, they did not know that this group of people was a trap set by the Left General's residence and Zhu Wuxin, deliberately letting them in. However, how could the ultimate martial realm's army give up in order to obtain the divine sword? Thus, they organized the army and used Desolate City as a base to fight to the death. The ultimate martial realm's realm army's president, Sky Supreme Martial Realm, brought 100,000 elite aces and personally appeared in Desolate City's territory, overseeing the Desolate City. He organized the army's defense while trying to subdue the extreme Dao divine sword. Sky Supreme Martial Realm was extremely powerful, his cultivation was even stronger than Xue Zhehuang's by 30%. He was the ultimate martial realm and had commanded the realm army for countless years. His experience in leading troops was definitely more than Xue Zhehuang's. After all, Xue Zhehuang had only commanded the Snow Realm army for tens of thousands of years. After that, he lived in seclusion in the Nine Emperors' residence. The difference between the two was obvious. Sky Supreme Martial Realm was a middle-aged man over 50 years old. He was vigorous and dignified, wearing military armor and holding a divine weapon. He had a square face and was awe-inspiring without being angry. Looking at the pseudo-world weapon divine weapon on the mountain peak, anger appeared in his eyes as he was unable to subdue the extreme Dao divine sword after a few consecutive attacks. Gu Qingyu was still controlling the extreme Dao divine sword from afar. The divine sword was right in front of him, but no one could get close to it. It was like a big fat piece of meat that could be seen but could not be eaten. Sky Supreme Martial Realm clenched his iron fist and said coldly, "Pass down the order, find an extreme Dao sword user. Anyone who can subdue this extreme Dao divine sword will be the commander of 100,000 realm army. They will be promoted to the rank of king and be given a territory." Behind Sky Supreme Martial Realm stood 10 peak experts. They did not have any reputation in the Snow Nation's divine realm, but they were very famous in the ultimate martial realm. They were respectfully called the 10 Martial Saints by the common people. Below the ultimate martial realm, they were definitely unparalleled existences. These 10 experts had all tried, but none of them were able to obtain the divine sword's recognition. Instead, they were met with resistance and were injured. Their blood soaked their divine armors and fluttered in the wind. Yes. One of the martial saints bowed and left. He passed down the order, hoping to find an existence in the ultimate martial realm's realm army who had comprehended the extreme Dao divine sword to bring it back to the ultimate martial realm. 3,000 li east of the desolate border city, Xue Zhehuang led 300,000 Snow Realm army elites and was approaching the desolate border city. They just happened to bump into Yi Qinghan and the others who were defeated. Left Marshal, how many people from the ultimate martial realm have invaded the desolate border city? Xue Zhehuang asked in a deep voice. Ninth Emperor, according to our initial estimation, there are around 300,000 people. The leader is none other than the ultimate martial realm's realm army's commander, Sky Supreme Martial Realm. We only have a little more than 30,000 people. We are unable to resist and suffered heavy losses. We had no choice but to retreat from the battlefield. It's a pity that the left martial residents sacrificed a great general. Zhu Wuxin pretended to be sad and said. 300,000 ultimate martial realm's realm army, and Xue Zhehuang also brought 300,000 people. The leader of the opposing side was also Sky Supreme Martial Realm. The odds of victory were 50-50. Xue Zhehuang seemed to know Sky Supreme Martial Realm. The corner of his mouth turned cold and he said angrily, "So it's him. How dare he invade my Snow Nation's divine realm, slaughter my realm army, and destroy my city. Today, I will make them all stay in the Snow Nation's divine realm. This marshal is willing to lend a hand to Ninth Emperor. This is a great humiliation. This marshal will personally rush to the front lines and take revenge for my left martial residence's great general." Yi Qinghan said angrily. Xue Zhehuang quickly comforted him, "Don't be angry, left marshal. You only have 30,000 people. Against 300,000 ultimate martial realm's realm army, you will not be able to resist. Furthermore, Sky Supreme Martial Realm is older than me. When I was not the Snow Nation's commander, he was already the ultimate martial realm's commander. His experience in commanding an army is not something you can contend against." Chapter 1377. Xue Nine Emperor would never have thought that this war was a trap set up by the left general residents and Zhu Wuxin. He trusted Yi Qinghan a lot and brought his army to take revenge. Boom! 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 The army's aura soared to the sky. Step by step, they advanced towards Desolate City. The ultimate martial realm army in Desolate City never thought of leaving. They had to take the pseudo-world artifact first. However, there was a difference between an ownerless pseudo-world artifact and an ownerless pseudo-world artifact. If it was ownerless, an expert could take it away by force. However, if it was ownerless, the artifact spirit would be loyal to its master. As long as Gu Qingyu maintained a connection with the pseudo-world artifact, it would fight back on its own. Supreme Martial Realm was personally overseeing Desolate City, commanding the army to welcome Xue Nine Emperor's army. In order to get the pseudo-world artifact, he didn't hesitate to start a war between the two realms. The army was 30 miles apart. They were already within the range of the realm opening crossbows. The Snow Realm army stopped advancing and got into formation, preparing to shoot. Yi Qinghan found Xian Yanxue and whispered, "When we fight, use your strongest technique. Kill as many as you can. Be as high profile as possible. Then, find a suitable time to fake your death. I will shoot you into the Inshur's pot at the crucial moment. Then, we can retreat one by one." Xian Yanxue nodded. Shui Nine Emperor didn't need to shout anymore. After the army was in formation, he ordered the archers to shoot. Xiao! Xiao! In a split second, the rain gathered and hundreds of thousands of arrows pierced through the clouds. Xiao! 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 Shoot! Shoot! Defend! Xiao! 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 Yi Qinghan stared at the battle with an expressionless face. At this moment, the exchange of fire was merely a way to exhaust each other's strength. Once the ballista bolts were no longer effective, a direct battle would begin. Once too many people died, the anger of the two armies would be unleashed, and this battle would be impossible to resolve. Little Yu, lead the three experts from Hell and Yan Yunbei into the city. Xiao! 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 Yi Qinghan! Xiao! 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 All right. Xiao Yu stared ahead and led Si Wu, Di Ling and Ji Sha to disappear from everyone's sight. Yan Yunbei followed closely behind. At this time, Gu Qingyu, who was in the distance, moved his divine sword. With a long sword hum, the divine sword was about to leave. How could the experts of the ultimate martial world allow it to leave? They gathered a portion of their elite forces to confine it on the mountain peak. They couldn't seize it, and they also didn't allow it to leave. The ultimate martial realm's experts split into two groups, giving Xiaoye and the others a chance to sneak into the city from the sky. Yi Qinghan was worried that the four of them would not be able to stir up a big wave, so he immediately placed restrictions on Li Yifeng and some of the Grand Elders of the Heavenly Hall. He said coldly, "I'll give you all a chance to make a contribution. If you succeed, you can follow me forever. I can even provide you with supreme godly medicine to restore your vitality. If you fail, you will die in desolate border city." Li Yifeng and the others were forcibly pushed to the battlefield, and they had no choice but to brace themselves and sneak into the border city. In less than an incense's time, desolate border city was in chaos. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. These were all top-notch supreme assassins. Which one of them wasn't at the peak of the supreme realm? Especially those few old bastards of the Heavenly Hall. They were very experienced, and it was easy for them to sneak into the city. Boom! Ah! Enemies! Ah! Miserable shrieks could be heard endlessly. The army was in chaos. Immediately, the divine arrows of the Snow Kingdom's army pierced through the defense. The rain of arrows rained down on the city, almost covering the entire city. The Sky Martial Saint was furious. He shattered space with a palm strike, and directly blew a Grand Elder of the Heavenly Hall out of the alternate space. Swish swish swish. The 10 revered martial saints drew their swords and attacked from all directions. The sword formation seized the soul, and directly killed the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Hall. He didn't even have the strength to resist. These 10 revered martial saints were very terrifying. Once they worked together, even Yi Qinghan would find it hard to last more than 10 moves. Boom boom boom. The 10 revered martial saints used stellar transposition, and their movements were perfectly coordinated. A sword pierced through space and forced Li Yifeng out. Puqi. Yan Yunbei killed a centurion with a sword, and took the opportunity to attack one of the revered martial saints. Hua! At this moment, dark clouds covered the sky, and countless lightning covered the sky, engulfing the desolate border city, and enveloping the hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Everyone, don't panic. Use your strength to defend the sky. The Sky Marshal Saint roared deafeningly. Immediately after, he drew his sword from the city wall and stabbed at Little Yu. Roar! Shio shio shio. Sword after sword seized the soul. The general personally went into battle, and raised the morale of the soldiers. Instantly, divine radiance covered the sky, and blocked the lightning outside. The defensive formation was activated again. Boom! The Sky Marshal Saint was an extreme expert. His sword actually tore through space and attacked Little Yu's body. Boom! Little Yu controlled the lightning and blocked the sword. The attacks of the two experts soared through the galaxy, and engulfed all directions. The giant God Realm's army was scattered, and the defensive barrier shook again, as if it would break at any moment. However, the Sky Marshal Saint didn't give up on attacking. He pressed Little Yu step by step. Every time he attacked, he would force Little Yu to retreat several thousand meters. Soon, she was forced out of the desolate border city. The 10 revered martial saints in the city continued to attack space and time, forcing Yan Yunbei and the others out. The army crazily attacked, and forced them into a corner. At this moment, Yi Qinghan waved his hand and said, "Attack. No matter the cost, keep these 300,000 people here." Boom! The Snow Border Army's aura was 10,000 zhang high, and their spears tore through space. Yi Qinghan gave Jiang Jingtian a look, indicating for him to help Little Yu. After all, the difference between Little Yu and the Sky Marshal Saint was too big. Even with the help of the Thunder God's lightning hammer, she couldn't maintain a stalemate. Hua! Jiang Jingtian's spear tore through space and time, creating a black vortex like a black hole. The spear arrived behind the Sky Marshal Saint. Boom! Kacha. The Sky Marshal Saint used his sword to defend, and it collided with the world-piercing spear. The impact shook space and time, and the divine sword in his hand was directly shattered. That was an over-god weapon. He could force Little Yu back, but that was because Little Yu was thin and weak, and was only suitable for assassination. However, Jiang Jingtian was a peak physical expert. Other than Yi Qinghan, there were few who could match him. Jiang Jingtian was powerful. After shattering the over-god weapon, he swept out with his spear, and a crack appeared in space. Boom! The Sky Marshal Saint's over-god power poured out, and his martial Tao rumbled. He slammed his palm onto the world-piercing spear, shaking heaven and earth and causing the ground to crack. Hua! Little Yu activated the Thunder God's lightning hammer, and a bucket-like lightning tore through space, as if it wanted to destroy heaven and earth, and rushed towards the Sky Marshal Saint. With two over-god experts working together, and with a pseudo-world weapon, no matter how strong the Sky Marshal Saint was, he couldn't do anything. Bang! 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 Hua! Hua! Space continued to shatter, and the Sky Marshal Saint was forced to retreat. The 10 revered martial saints were held back by Yan Yunbei and the others, and couldn't help at all. The Snow Border Army, under the lead of Xue Jiuhuang, attacked the desolate border city. However, Yi Qinghan summoned Zhong Quan, and the cold light in his eyes was terrifying. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.